Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Abroad Show. It's Monday, the 24th of June, 2024. We're sitting here after a convincing 10-goal belting of the Geelong Footy Club on Friday night. I've got a very special guest. It's been a while. I've got Sean Peterbud from the Prendercast. Mate, welcome back to the BA Show.
It's very good to be back. Thank you for inviting me. I got the text and I sort of thought, about time.
It is.
No, I thought, oh, good night. It sounds like good fun. We'll do it. I thought it's as you would well appreciate. It's easier and a lot more fun to talk about wins and when the team's playing really well. You sort of you can't get enough of it. You want to talk about it. So no, thrilled to be here. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
No problem. It's timing is everything, and I don't know. I wanted to speak to people that I hadn't spoken to in a while. And to be honest, I was like, oh, long shot here, but fair enough. Here we are.
I thought you were going to say that how far down the queue I was. I went to A, I went to B. How far back was I?
No, it's well, to be fair, we don't see your face a lot. So I'm glad that you'd graced the channel with it. And now we get to put a face behind the name. But mate, how good's footy?
Well, like I said, and I said this actually on our show this week, sort of in one of the first things we spoke about that was footy related. It's actually, it's actually interesting to get your perspective on this, and I hope that the people watching understand where I'm coming from. It's actually easier to put together a show after a loss in the sense that you know where to start and you know what to talk about. All the talking points are really, really, really obvious, and it's you get to play doctor and sort of diagnose what the problems are and all that kind of stuff. And it is easier the show kind of writes itself a little bit more. Whereas when you have a really, really good win, or when you're traveling quite well, like we are, you get overwhelmed with where do I start? What do we talk about? We don't want to miss something. And you find yourself going, when you're putting your notes together at least, just a million miles an hour. You don't want to forget something. You don't want to miss something. You don't want to play something down or not give it the credit it deserves or celebrate something. And it's I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I had that realization. When did we record? Sunday morning, I think it was. So like Saturday evening, I'm sort of sitting there trying to get the notes together, and it was like, where do we start?
Yeah. Well, we've been conditioned, let's be honest. When did you guys start the pod? 2017?
Yeah, I think we started doing the Carlton stuff more strictly in 18.
Okay.
But 17, we'd done some general sports stuff and talked about footy. But what you're alluding to, like 18 was grim.
Yeah.
Like 19 was grim. 20 sort of ups and downs, but disappointing. Like 21 was just, geez, it was so hard to watch because we should be better. And then 22 had the ups and the highs and the lows. And then 23 had the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And then sort of, it's interesting to kind of be sitting with so much work still to be done. I think there's this conversation in the broader footy discourse, which I find so amusing. Carlton fans aren't getting ahead of ourselves. We're just enjoying watching a good team. No one's lining up for grand final tickets. No one's cancelling holidays in September and all that kind of stuff. We're just enjoying watching a team that's playing really good football. And this rush and this panic to kind of try to downplay everything that the Carlton Football Club does, to me, is just, you might be exposed to it as well. It's just so amusing. It's like no one's doing any of those silly things. No one's buying tickets. No one's doing that. Everyone's just enjoying watching a team that's playing really good football.
Yeah.
And for the first time, let's be fair, for the first time in the lifetimes of quite a few fans, are playing consistently good football.
Yeah. Well, to circle back to what you're saying as a creator, you're right. It was about what's wrong with the club. And so because there was so much wrong, there was so much dysfunction and there was so much disconnection. Some point last year, I'm obviously middle point of the year, the turnaround, all of that. Like that was awesome. Going into this year, I'll be honest. My first thought at the start of the year was, okay, I believe they've earned my trust. I hope it wasn't just a 10 to 12 game run, and we circle back. Maybe there was a bit of trauma coming out there, but yeah, I've never enjoyed the footy more than what I have in the last 12 and a half months.
There's just so much, and the phrase we've been using of late is scar tissue.
Yeah.
There's just so much scar tissue around, and to be fair, it's still there. Like
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you viewed the loss to Geelong 7 or 8 weeks ago, but the most pleasing thing and the most pleasing aspect about the win on Friday night was the club really seems to be owning these, or recognizing, responding to these kind of like markers along the way. Essendon King's birthday in 2023 was an embarrassment. Like it was rock bottom. It was as bad as we can get. Big stakes, big rival. We're in the pits, and we just didn't show up. And it was sort of like, as bad as you thought we were going, we've kept digging. And then 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it was now, I think the club recognised that. I think the club recognised last year we played these guys on this day in this fixture and we're just not up to it.
Yeah.
We just were not. That's not us. That was embarrassment, and it's not us again. And I think you play Geelong 8 weeks after the disappointing loss to them where, we kicked 2 goals 8 to start the game. Durden, I don't want to blame people, Durden has the shot early in the last quarter and misses, and it just a few things don't quite go away. We lose by 15 points. I think there was a real sense of, we get them this time. And there's all sorts of ones like that. With Collingwood's the big one coming up in however many weeks. But kicking off these little things that, we remember the shortcomings and then hopefully use those disappointments when we play next to get over the line. And I think fans are living that as well. Fans are remembering, the Zach Toohey, nothing against Zach Toohey. He's but the jumper tug and really pumping it up and all that kind of stuff. And there were moments on Friday night which felt like the club had spoken about those sort of things and is aware of them, and is sort of recognising the power of, we don't want to give Collingwood too much credit, but something that they've done extremely well. We spoke about on our show when they beat us. I think it was after Geelong, wasn't it? Was it Geelong and Collingwood?
Geelong and Collingwood.
Yes, they beat us the next week. We lose by a kick. Like, it wasn't the end. It was really disappointing to lose the game. We lose by a goal. I don't think we played particularly well on the night. Dacos snatches the game away from us. But I think Collingwood have owned those emotional things so much better than Carlton have. And I think that we are now starting to kind of go, no, they're important. Like, if we play Collingwood or if we play Essendon or if we play, doesn't matter who it is, and they value beating us more than we value beating them, it actually counts for something. It might not win them the game, but when it gets down to fine margins, it actually might be the difference. That they emotionally are up for it, and they emotionally own, the prize that it's at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if we can beat this mob and what it means. Like, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I said on our show yesterday that, and you sort of alluded to having fun watching the team, and it's as much fun as you've had watching this team potentially ever. But I sort of had this feeling that if we can beat Collingwood, we've got them.
This next time coming up?
Yeah. I think if we can beat them, it's really, because, we got over them last year in the second game, and that was great because it was kept the march going towards finals. They're a great team. They're the reigning premier. They've been, prelim finalists the year before, beaten by a kick or whatever it was in Sydney. They're an excellent team. But if we can get them, the mentality piece of that going to the back part of the year will be fucking enormous.
Yeah.
And I think that just speaks to the idea of owning. It's important that you win these big games. It's important that you beat your big rivals. It's important that in front of big crowds, like on King's birthday eve, like on Friday night. This is great. And this is a privilege of playing for the footy club. And when you harness it, and when you embrace it, and when you win, only good things come of it. It's this weird sort of thing where I think that finally that mentality piece is starting to go the right way for us.
Yeah.
I think that could mean so much.
Has there been a particular point in time this year where you've had more trust in them Are you still trusting them? Like, where are you with your level of trust in the team and week to week what they're going to give you, and what does it feel like for you compared to earlier on in life?
I'm just that's actually a good question. I had the wrong. There was a match. Let me look at the fixture. There
Mm,
was a game where I remember speaking about that on the show. I remember saying something basically what you've sort of said, and it was kind of like for the first time in a really like a long time, it kind of feels like you can trust them to turn up and be consistent and to do all the things that we do well to kind
yeah.
of to sort of do them. What game was it? It certainly wasn't the Crows game. Um,
Mm-mm. It
no,
definitely would. It
it
would have had to
certainly
have been
wasn't
after
that.
Sydney, maybe.
I reckon there was there was a moment I might have spoken about it with, even though we did lose the next week, but there was a moment with maybe the Giants who were
Right.
flying, and you just thought, like, this is a big game, this is a big test. You know, what we've lost the week before, the disappointing loss to Adelaide, and it was kind of like, what do you got for us? Like, and to be fair, we lose the next week against Geelong. Like, we didn't play badly. We lose the next week against Collingwood, and relatively speaking, like I said, we lose by a goal. Dacos kicks a goal with 40 seconds left. So it was sort of like, even though we've lost two and we took care of the Giants and played unbelievable footy on the night to put them away, I remember walking from that and just thinking, that's the first time where I've seen us play. Uh, there was that spell in the third quarter, maybe, where we just put them to the sword. And it was sort of like, it doesn't feel like an aberration. It feels like we can do that again.
Mm.
It doesn't just feel like how did that happen? How did all the pieces of that come together to allow us to play good footy for 15 minutes? It was sort of like, no, we can do it, and we can do it again, and we can put that together against good teams. And like I said, the Geelong game was disappointing. The Collingwood loss was disappointing, but it was sort of, I remember thinking, okay, well, that's like our best is A, good, like really good, and B, it's actually repeatable. You see teams that are struggling or building, occasionally you'll do it, occasionally you'll put together a 10-minute spell that's good. It might not win you the game, but you put together a spell where you're like, oh, that's good. That's actually kind of what the perfect version of this team. Um, and that to me kind of smacked of, oh, we're actually kind of doing this a little bit more often than we've used to. And we're doing it against consensus best teams. So it actually means more, which is, yeah, very like super encouraging. Obviously, you just want sort of nothing really better than you always want the team to win, but if they do it playing like blowing someone off the park, you sort of walk away going, well, that's a statement, that's a message.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a moment in the third quarter, start of the third, on Friday night. Like, I usually have my phone with me. I'll try and remember certain moments in quarters just for when I'm doing my review. And I actually, for the first time in, I think ever, I just wrote down, stop taking notes. Like, just enjoy it. It's here. Um, I don't know. I felt like there was an arrival on Friday night, and we'll get stuck into the review as well. We'll ask those in the chat to give us a sentence for a summary, and I'll bring them up on screen. But there was a feeling of just, I don't know, like it was impactful, and I don't know. The cynic says, "Oh, but Geelong after the bye," but then the reality is we've never put them to the sword like that. And I really felt a different positivity after the game that, oh wow, like this is them. They're here.
That's the thing you have to overcome. It's such a good point because when we lost to Geelong 8 weeks ago, like I love this conversation at the moment, like Geelong are no good. And you're like, well, when they beat us 8 weeks ago, they were how far
Yeah.
Geelong? It's Geelong and then daylight. I think they'll be okay. They're in a rough trot at the moment. But I think Geelong beat us, not because necessarily they were better than us, but just because that scar tissue, as I said earlier, but that experience and that level of confidence against this particular Carlton team. Yeah, we beat them in round, I think it was 2 or 3 last year, but it wasn't super convincing. We sort of made real heavy weather of a game at times. It looked like, guys, you're actually feels like you're closer to blowing these blokes away than you realize. And they hung around and made it interesting and whatever. But they hung around because they had confidence that they could beat us.
Mm.
They beat us in round 8 or 7 because They had confidence, "Oh, we can beat these guys." Whereas we kind of looked a little bit like a team who knows we can beat. How do we beat them? We know we can win. Geez, we can beat Geelong, but actually going out and doing it. So to play them on Friday night and to just when you watch the replay, it's really interesting. Geelong get to within a kick in the second quarter, but then we just gap them again.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of you watch the replay dispassionately. If it was a neutral game on a Friday night and you and I are sitting at home watching it, like you never really felt the Carlton win was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
You sort of be hoping as a neutral that kick a couple goals, make a game of it, make it interesting. But you rewatch it through, like I said, a dispassionate view, and you kind of like, we've got these guys under control. Like we've got them in hand here, and it's what we hoped round 7 was going to be, but didn't become. So it's this awesome kind of sense of we get to see that maturation and some experience coming into the group really quickly. We get to see it separated by 8 weeks. We don't have to wait 12 months to see, well, how much better are you this time than you were last time? We saw it in 8 weeks. And you just went, what was it? It was a 13 goal turnaround. You're going, that's substantial.
Yeah. Yeah. There were so many elements to it. What were some of the key themes and issues that you noticed? You know, the symbolic themes and issues from Friday night that you noticed?
So there was one, and again, we spoke about it on the show. There was one that you always kind of get, I don't know about you guys and people in the chat and you, Terry, but I get sort of sucked towards passage of time moments. And there's always this kind of, the fun thing about sports sometimes is recognizing the ripples and recognizing something that happened last time doesn't happen this time. So when we beat Collingwood in the second game last year, it was like we got the first goal of the last quarter. The goal that eluded us for 30 minutes when they knocked us out of the finals, that didn't come. We kicked 5 points or 6 points or whatever it was. We got the first goal. And it's sort of like 12 months ago, that didn't happen. For me on Friday night, it was, and people, I can never remember the game. I actually should have looked this up. We played Geelong at the MCG in 22 maybe. And the first goal of the game was kicked to the punt road end when Reece Stanley ragdolled TDK. And it just set the tone for the night. They were just too big, too experienced, too strong. Stanley just threw him out of the way and kicked the goal. And you just went,
well,
we were nowhere near him. We were nowhere near him. And they were just too good for us. And it just came to on Friday night, TDK gets rid of his brother, kicks the goal. And you just thought, on that night, Blitzarves was too big and whatever for Cripps, and Danger sort of ran riot and blah, blah, blah. Like, whereas, and they won the flag. I'm pretty sure it was 22, but like they won the flag that year. They were a good team. But they just bullied us and blew us away. And I remember thinking 2 years later and 8 weeks on from last time, there was just that moment, that ripple where TDK at the punt road end gets rid of his opponent, kicks the goal. And you just went, we've grown up, physically, emotionally, etc. But just the level of, I just loved the way, and I'm not sure if you've spoken to this in the past. We have broken records. There are so many games in the last 4 years where we all watch, or maybe 3 years, and we all watch and think we should be better than we are, and why aren't we better than this, and blah, blah. And you would look at huddles at 3/4 time. We might be just in front. We might be just behind. We might be in touching distance. And you'd sort of think, do they believe they can win the game? Do they honestly leave this huddle? Are they leaving this huddle honestly thinking, we're going to win? Against Port, against Essendon, against Geelong, I think they've left huddle. I think that's the growing up piece. I think they've walked away thinking, yeah, we win this. Yep.
Yeah. One of those ripple moments for me, there were two that I can think of. One was Nick Newman just bullying Dempsey for a moment on the outer wing. And I was up on level 2 on the wing. I looked down and I thought, like, we're the bullies now. Like, we're the big brother now. Dempsey is a young kid and he's very early in his career. Obviously, Newman's at, more towards the end than the start. But I felt like that together with Mitch McGovern's bump just had a little bit of something about it. We're usually the team that other teams know Carlton are mentally weak. Just press them for long enough, they'll fold. And I found something different happening there. And then I think the other one was when Tom Hawkins went down, my immediate reaction was, there's the end of an era. And I'm kind of grateful, not to make fun of Tom getting injured, but I'm kind of grateful it happened against us, because I was hoping to see that we would be, and we will be, hopefully, that team that takes the baton and goes from there.
No, 100%. Like there's this, and I don't know, where you were placed to remember this, but one of the great what ifs, what could have been moments, and it's a little bit different in a sense, but in 2011, when we lose the semi-final to the Eagles, and I know this for a fact, I've inadvertently over the years come across a couple of boys who played in that team, and there was this incredible belief that we would beat Geelong in a prelim final on the MCG. Like we
Yeah.
could beat them. And there was this incredible belief that as good as they were, and they win the flag, and maybe we beat Collingwood the next week, maybe we don't. But there was this incredible belief that get them on the MCG, we can beat these guys. And I think there's no part of being really good in these big elite sporting environments is confidence and having a bit of strut and having a bit of belief and being a bit cocksure and whatever. And yeah, you've just hit the nail on the head with a few of those contests. We're just too good for you. Not tonight. Hopefully, we're just too good for you now for the next whatever this cycle is, however long this cycle is. Is it 3 years, 4, whatever it might be?
Yeah.
But you actually have to win the game. You have to shut the door. And with a few teams, we haven't really been good enough to shut the door when we should be better than them. And so Friday night for me was really important in that it was a game that against a decent side who have been, on the whole, as Chris Scott sort of said, I mean, they're 8-5 going into the game.
Yeah.
To just put them away is something
Did
it's like un-Carlton-like in terms of the
Yeah.
last 10, 12 years. To just be like, this ends and this ends badly, and the only reason this doesn't get worse is because the siren goes.
Yeah. Did you have that belief pre-game that we were still yet to really have that statement win? Were you still looking for that type of win, or were you just happy that we were just ticking the wins along the way and showing gradual improvement?
Yeah, we mentioned the GWS game. I thought the GWS one was good in that sense, because that particularly at the time, they were playing really, really good footy. I think what we saw in round one in the second half was it was ridiculous. That was really good. And you sort of thought that's so impressive that it's not just, a bit lucky they came from, you can't do that. It's like, no, well, it did happen. This idea that you can't do it again. We don't have to do it again. We only have to do it once to win that game. That was really, really good. To go over to Port and to kind of properly beat an Adelaide team. Obviously, we beat Freo, but to properly beat one of Port or Adelaide. And again, when you watch the game dispassionately, it's kind of like a comfortable-ish result. That was really good. Like Essendon, I mean, people discredit them, might not be totally convinced by them. They were second when we beat them by 5 goals and again, controlled them for pretty much the whole night. So I think there's there's this kind of catalogue of results which you can kind of point to now that are positive and pointing towards you're a good team, you're a good side, and you're going to take a lot of beating for teams that want to beat you. And you're doing it, we mentioned being reliable, and they're turning up and being reliable more often than not. Even in losses, they've played some okay footy and haven't been blown away, but for Sydney. So I think there's this kind of growing level of confidence that we're really well placed.
Absolutely. What else happened on Friday that was of importance to you?
It's a good question in the sense that I think the beauty of Friday night was that apart from pretty much everyone played well, but TDK was ridiculous, Cripps was phenomenal, Charlie kicks 5, etc. A lot of there's some top line contributions which are great. The two big takeaways, and they kind of dovetail into one for me, And anyone who listens to our show or follows us on Twitter knows we have opinions, shall we say, about Andrew Russell and strength and conditioning. This is a positive in two parts, because we've long said, if you're in navy blue, we will be your biggest fans. Just give us something to be a fan about. We will be your biggest fan. If you're a player, if you're Vossi yourself, whoever it might be, Andrew Russell, give us a reason to back you in, and we'll probably go too far. It'll probably be like, you're actually overdoing it a bit here. You need to relax.
Yeah. We'll get to that. We'll get to Collingwood Twitter in a minute, because I want to ask
this is
you.
it. Going like just that thing about, and Andrew Russell's in that boat. So I mentioned earlier the 3 wins, which I think now are in succession. The bye's sort of thrown me off a little bit. Port Adelaide, Essendon, and then now Geelong. I just want to say, I don't think we're necessarily ridiculous aerobic beasts as such, but it has improved. It has noticeably improved that we are running games out relative to our opponents better, which is great. But the thing that's lost in the wash, that's a real kind of like fun top line observation, to be like, we do look fitter than we have at different times. But the real top line, the real sort of in the weeds thing that I love about it is we're actually playing last quarters with so much intent.
Yeah.
You think about how we started the last. It's all good and well to run out the game and run on top of the ground and all that kind of stuff, which is fucking great.
Yeah.
But what we've actually done, Port Adelaide, Cripps kicks a goal after 20 seconds. Starts the last quarter. We need to start well. We need to get things going. And kicks a goal early, kicks another goal quickly after that. Essendon got the first goal. We get the first goal of the last quarter just to go, just relax. Yeah, you thought you left the huddle needing X goals, well, now you need X plus 1. Against Geelong, come out, 9 goals in the quarter. It's not about running the game out, but playing the game out really positively.
Yeah.
And it's something that in the past, when we've been white-knuckling results, we sort of haven't really done. Even Melbourne, we sort of hung on rather than when we're 5-6 goals up. We were like playing brilliant footy to get us into this position. Yes, they've had a run on. Yes, they've got momentum. But we've played some good footy tonight against this team. We can absolutely do it again. That to me is probably one of the biggest takeaways. Yeah, we're running games out better, which is great. But B, we're actually approaching these quarters with the right mentality. Score.
Yeah.
If you score, you'll win. Look at great example. Look at North Melbourne against Collingwood. They kick 1 goal, they win the game. Even when they were 5 goals up, 4 goals up, 3 goals up, you kick 1 goal and you win the game. That's all you need.
Mentally, they just weren't there to do it.
No. Whereas, and we've been that team in the past as well. I'm not criticising North. We've been there where it's hold on rather than no, just win the game. Play the game out. You'll score. That'll open the game up, and that suits us. That was probably the most pleasing thing, was we didn't fall in by 2.5 goals.
Yeah.
We ran it out and we played it out the right way.
How much of that is you think the improved fitness encompasses?
Absolutely, some of it is.
And how much is it just the confidence and the form of the team?
And that's why I think I like kind of making the point or bringing it up, because I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's improved fitness, which is then facilitating or allowing the group to run the game out. But it's actually also giving them confidence to run the game out. But supporting that is actually playing a style or a brand of footy which doesn't let your opponent get a look. Geelong, you can keep coming, and once again we saw it late in the game. They put the cue in the rack.
Yeah.
We broke them.
See that passage of play where Ollie Hollands kicks the goal and Zach Tui just gives up on it?
It's bad. And look, I don't want to make it a bashing Zach Tui sort of situation.
No, it's a mental shift in what we're able to do to a team.
He doesn't Ollie actually looks inboard and goes, I can straighten up. I don't have to run away and go on. I can actually straighten up here, because they're not even. And Walsh was the same. The Walsh goal wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
But there was where you just went, we've broken them.
Yeah.
On this night, I'm not saying, they're broken forever, they're no good down to the bottom of the ladder you go, but it was like we played in a manner in which our opponent just went, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, got us tonight. Whereas Melbourne, we kind of let them keep coming. Adelaide let them keep coming. Won one of those games, lost one of those games. Richmond earlier in the season, we sort of let them keep coming and stayed in the game. Whereas on Friday night, you went, and Essendon sort of just went, no, it's over.
Yeah. We spoke weeks ago, months ago, probably at the peak of our injuries. And I reckon from that moment, what I've noticed about this group, I mean, the fact that Cowan gets trusted so much in his position to force Zach Williams further up the field, the fact that Chincotta is now playing this different role, being a lot more responsible defensively on a midfielder or a small forward or a halfback. What have you made of that? The trust in the lesser known names, we'll call them, that they are known, they're just not in the shining lights like the other teams. What have you made of that in light of where we were only, honestly, 5-6 weeks ago? It was 13 or 14 on the injury list.
One of the best stories in footy, I don't think he's been injured as such, but speaking to the putting faith in lesser lights conversation, one of the best stories in footy that's getting next to no airtime at all, column inches, is there's no real positions in football anymore. It's a bit weird, but we got a guy playing centre half back who no one's talking about. We're second on the ladder.
Yeah.
Brody Kemp's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
We got a guy playing centre half back who's played. Tim did the thing. He's played 35 games. He's had his ups and downs. He's worked his way back into the team, sort of thing, and is now holding down a really important role for us in concert with Weeders and with Mitch McGovern and with Nick Newman and Sard, etc. Played 35 games. Cowan's a great example. Watched a bit of the twos on Saturday, I think it was, and I think we're now seeing the benefit of the senior team getting better. And look, we've lamented at times, what's our VFL program about? It's not really about winning. It's not really about winning the VFL premiership. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be the number one priority, but we probably don't win enough games. That's another conversation altogether. But what this current situation is allowing us to do is play Billy Wilson a full season in the twos, play Jackson Bin for a full season, play Ashton Moyer for a full season. You're playing a good level of football, senior football, probably for the first time in their career. There's no pressure for them at 18 and 19 to come in and have to impact AFL level. You don't have to come in Paddy Dow, Samo, Lockie O'Brien, the list goes on. We don't need you to be in our best 18 players now. You get to play a year in the twos, 2 years in the twos. A lot of teams have done that brilliantly in the past. Hawthorn have done it so well at various times, is recognising these are kids, the expectation that they come in and contribute to an AFL best 18 can oftentimes be unrealistic, and it can be too much to ask of them. And what we're seeing, Cowan, how many games did he play last year? He played the first couple, and then had a stint in the twos, and then played a couple here or there. He might have played half a dozen or so games.
Played 7 last year, and he's played his 15th game for his career on the weekend.
Yeah. So he's a perfect example of, I didn't think when he came in and he started the year in the seniors that he was not up to it. I didn't think he went, once again, I hate naming names, but poor old Sam Philp played his debut, I think it was against Essendon in a COVID game. Yeah. And you just sort of, you felt a bit bad for him. You just went, you're just not ready.
Yeah.
Whether you're up to it or not, you're actually just not ready at the moment to be playing tonight. And that's fine. Unfortunately, his groins meant he couldn't go back and get touch and fitness and whatever. But with Cowan, I remember thinking, you've done some nice things. I can see a player here. This is good. But we don't need you right now. Yeah. If you need to go back to the twos and play 10 weeks, 12 weeks and whatnot, and then you get another preseason, and then you look at him now, and he missed the first part of the year, didn't he? It wasn't like he was a walk-up in the first.
Well, I thought he was anonymous. There wasn't a lot coming out from Carlton media or AFL media about him. He wasn't really on team sheets. There was not much happening about him.
But what's great about that, again, we don't need the fervour coming from a fan base as to why you're not picking him.
True.
Because just at the moment, we don't need him just at the moment.
Yeah.
And then when he gets his opportunity, it's one of the more pleasing things for the year, and he kind of typifies it. But he gets his opportunity, he comes into the team, and it's like, yeah, you're better than you were this time last year. You're
Yeah.
bigger and you're fitter and you're more confident and more assured in your role, etc. Going, this is development working. We're seeing it in real time.
Yeah.
And he's just one. Ollie Hollins is an example, played a lot more footy last year. But Boyd, like I thought Boyd's game on the weekend, up against a team who last time out, Stengel, Close, and Brian Myers caused us problems. And Ollie Henry, is it Ollie Henry? Is he the Geelong Henry? The
Geelong
younger
Henry.
Henry. But like those sort of small, mid-sized guys caused us issues. Well, Boyd, Sard, Cowan, Newman took care of business.
Yeah.
And you're going, that's exactly what you want to see from a team who learns the lessons of the past and gets better. So, I've just seen a thing in the chat from James. There it is.
James B.
Chincotta.
Yeah.
Chincotta's a great example. More mature, of course, but typifies again. He's not playing his quote preferred position type thing. If he could play anywhere, if you asked Alex Chincotta, "We'll play you wherever you want to play," he wouldn't say defensive forward or whatever. But he is symptomatic or emblematic of a group now that realizes or recognizes you win as a team, you play as a team, and then more than that, you exist as a squad. So he's in this awesome position now where he's like, I've busted my boiler to get into this team. I want to stay.
Yeah.
I don't want to give my spot up. I mean, we spoke a couple of weeks ago that a guy like Doc, unbelievable. We love Doc.
Yeah.
And there's a, without wanting to be tactless, we all hope he comes back. We all hope he gets the rehab and he gets it done and we get to see him playing footy again. Lockie Cowan might take his spot. Nick Newman take his spot. Alex Chincotta might take his spot. And that's awful for Doc individually. And it's, it's tough for us as fans who have watched him and loved him and whatnot to watch. But it's good for the club.
It's so good for the club. We actually spoke about that earlier in the preseason. I think Pommy mentioned it. Like one of the best things that could happen here is when Doc's better, he realizes, oh wow, you've transcended me. I'm going to help coach you now to be better than me, and away you go.
And one of the great moments in recent history for us was him kicking the goal against Richmond.
Yep,
unbelievable, just phenomenal. From all the setbacks he's had, and just to anyone watching, we're not putting a line through Sam Doherty, but we're just talking that like the strength of where the list is heading is there's a branch of reality where Sam Doherty comes back in 2025, and it's like, where does he fit now? Because Lockie Cowans, or as I said, Nick Newman, or whoever it might be, they might have gone past you.
Yeah. Which is what we want.
And for the individual, that sucks and that is awful. But it also speaks to the strength of hopefully where the team's going.
Yeah. This is a similar feel when I talk about the rucks. So I want to ask you about your take on the rucks. I love Pitto. I love what he brings to the team. I think for a club like ours that's been devoid of that physical warrior-like presence in the middle, I love what he brought. All of a sudden, he's, the criticism was he doesn't do a lot around the ground. He started showing signs of that. Unfortunately, gets injured. Now I'm watching Tom do. I didn't think Tom could do what I'm watching now. I knew he'd be good, and I was confident and had faith that he'd be good.
Tim and I spoke about trading Tom de Koning. we spoke about saying we all think he's a good player. We love Tommy de Koning. We think he'll be a good player, but can we flip him for something that maybe we need more? Can we send him to Geelong and get a couple of picks? And can we do something creative and turn him into something that maybe we need more than him? We hypothesized like flipping him to try to get like a Nick Watson. We need a quality small forward.
Right.
Can we turn him into something and trade up and bundle and get into the top 5 of draft? With a stop and defending our position, love Tommy de Koning. But I think he's a good player, and we'd seen some stuff from him. What we've seen in the last couple of weeks should be alarming.
Yeah.
in the competition. And we spoke about Chincotta obviously with just before. I reckon Tommy DeConning, one of the best things that can happen in a football club, the role of the ruckman is kind of like the most unique role in football in that it's like
Yeah.
the goalkeeper. It's its
Yeah.
own position on an island. And you're in competition with very specific players in the squad for one, maybe two spots. And you know it. You know exactly who are my rivals to get a game. Whereas if you're a half forward, I can play wing. I can go to the back or back line. I have a run through the middle if they need me. I can pinch hit as a small forward maybe. Zach Williams, perfect example. Where will they let me play this week? There's 4 or 5 roles they can let me play. Whereas with Tom DeConning, it's like, I've got to play ruck. Mark Pitnet, I've got to play the ruck. So this is probably the single best thing that's happened to Carlton in 2024. Mark Pitnet has his ups and downs with injury, which again, personally sucks for him. And Tom DeConning goes, that's my spot.
Yeah.
I've got X number of weeks now where it's me, I'm the man, and I'm not going to give him a choice.
Yeah.
It's not you or me, it's me or you.
Do you think that comes about because of the pressure, because of Pito's form? And do you think that we see this now because we have a lot more of an even spread of performers in other positions? I mean, the ruck's different because there's 2 of them really. But Voss seems to have this inkling towards the 2 rucks. I mean, you have to question it now.
So because look, Fab, if anyone listens to us, is people will know not a huge Mark Pitnet fan as a ruckman, in terms of what he gives us in the ruck sort of thing.
Yeah.
Pito's a lovely guy. Like Pito's the most awesome guy, by the way. Just brilliant. He's brilliant. And Fab wasn't on the show this week. I've been needling him for weeks now with 2 rucks. So we play 2 rucks. Like, because if you play 2 rucks, particularly the Mark Pitnet style of ruckman, it fundamentally changes the way you play. It fundamentally changes the way you can move the ball.
Yeah.
So, and then Pito's a number 1 ruck. DeConning can be the hybrid, but if Pitnet's rucking, then where do you put DeConning? If you put him forward, you're tall. You're very tall all of a sudden. And if you put him on the bench, it's kind of like, well, you're not going to get the best out of him. It's this weird kind of conundrum where you go, the easiest solution at the moment is TDK rucks. And when he needs a break, Cripps takes a ball up. Harry takes a centre bounce. Like it's actually become, I use the word dispassionate, it's actually become like, I think it's become a really obvious solution.
Yeah.
And again, sucks for Pitnet, but you're like, we can't kind of disrupt what we're giving at the moment. And then Pitnet's got 2 choices, and I think he will do the right thing, is, mate, you're just going to have to put together solid form in the 2s. You're just going to have to bang the door down.
Yeah.
See it as a challenge. Like, see it as this guy's risen to a different level while I've been out. Well, okay, I'll go with him. Because at the moment, you're gonna have to. Because if you don't, it's the class like you're number 2.
Yeah. The aura that Tom has commanded, and maybe I'm overreacting to the game against Geelong where the Cats just didn't set up rightly for him and didn't select the right team to combat him. But the fact that he now has to command that respect from opposition, it puts us immediately into a totally different stratosphere.
Well, you think about, I'm not exactly sure what the situation is is Reece Stanley fit?
I don't even know what the hell is going on there.
Someone said he was an emergency, but he was actually injured, and it's like, okay.
They said he did a knee and then named him as an emergency, but
so you sort of go, okay, well, what was Geelong's alternative in the ruck? And you were like they might have looked at it dispassionately and just thought, what is our alternative in the ruck?
Yeah.
Like, we actually don't have an option here. Who's a tall player that we can ruck? And we're just going to have to hope that we can kind of break even. And we've done that in the past. If we played a Gawn or someone and you've sort of gone, we're conceding this matchup one-on-one, we're just going to have to hope we can kind of nullify the impact of Grundy or Gawn or whoever's in form. And I think Geelong's attitude was that. It was probably like, we don't have a good matchup here. We're just going to have to hope we get out of this matchup alive?
Mm.
And the answer to that was no, they didn't. He was unbelievable. So I think that's as a pure like selection conundrum. It's an awesome position to be in, because worst case scenario is Tom De Koning, has stamped his claim on the number one ruck job, and best case is Pitnet looks at it as a challenge and realizes, okay, well, I've got to respond here, and wins his way back into the team. And if he wins his way back into the team on form, having played really, really well, you go, well, great. And to be fair as well, like if you look ahead, funnily enough, Richmond this week's a really good example because Nankervis is old school, big bodied ruckman.
Yeah.
So De Koning can jump all over him. And he's getting bigger and stronger, and he's as capable, more capable now than he has been at any other time to do the shoulder to shoulder grappling stuff. But that's obviously a more natural matchup for Pitnet.
Yeah.
To grapple with a Nankervis. So there will be occasions and matchups that don't suit De Koning, and there will be occasions and matchup that do suit Pitnet. The issue with that, of course, is we're not playing Pitto or De Koning. We're playing De Koning and Pitnet.
Yeah.
So then what does it cost us elsewhere?
Elsewhere. Yeah, that's true. Now, I feel like it's a weekly well, it has been a weekly conversation over the last month, probably because De Koning just keeps rising. I thought the Essendon game was the best I'd ever seen him play. Maybe even Port the week before that, but then he just blew them both out of the water with what he did on Friday night. So
there's this. It's so much like when you follow a player and he's been with us. When did we take him? We took him in 17, I think.
Pick 30 in the
memory
2017 draft. The
We got
draft
like
where we took O'Brien and Dow.
Yeah, Dow. So 18, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So he's seventh year. And you're kind of like, yeah, it's like prime time for him now, which is great. But the fun of watching a player like that develop, and we saw it with Charlie, then we're taken away from us and he came back. We saw it with Harry building. You see it with Cripps. All your good players that come through, Wiedering, they have ups and downs along the way and peaks and troughs in their development. But the fun of watching these guys is in the last 4 weeks, it feels like we've seen TDK's light bulb moment. Feels like we've seen that, like Neo in the Matrix, and kind of like sees it. We've seen that kind of, oh, okay, yeah, all right. I've played good footy.
He's him.
And I've had spells where I've played good footy, and I've had weeks where I've played good footy. But you're like, no, I've sort of figured this out now.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in the last little bit for TDK, which is really exciting. And long may it continue.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my big thoughts around both of them is what we didn't get a chance to do with Cruiser. I hope we learn. Maybe it's a bit of one of those sliding doors moments. We have the opportunity with Tom and Pitto now. If Tom is a bit sore, he's a bit banged up, we can make sure that, because everything's timing now, isn't it? When you get to the very top, everything is about getting the right players in form at the right time with health as much as you can. It's a really bruising game. If we can get Tom fit, firing, fresh, healthy, jumping on top of guys in finals footy, because we've got a more than competent backup ruckman there, fantastic.
And that's part of, you earn the opportunity to do things like that.
Yeah.
With like playing good footy and winning games of footy, clearly, and getting yourself in a strong position. But you also earn the right to do that with good list management, and you earn the right to do that with good S&C and rehab stuff. And, we spoke about, I don't know if it was at the height of our issues, injuries, troubles this year, but last year, the run to the prelim last year coincided with one very obvious thing. It was the fittest and most available our list had been.
Health of the list.
In 4 or 5 years. We were finally able to put our best team.
Yeah.
All the little pieces that they'd kind of been adding, since SOS started in 15, we'd kind of finally been able to cobble together what was pretty much our consensus best lineup.
Yeah.
And we won games of footy because we were finally able to get those guys on the park. So what you're saying is 100% correct. It's this kind of confluence of just, you need luck and you need timing and you need circumstance to all align. And if there comes an opportunity for us, whatever that opportunity might be, to make that kind of like be responsible with it, but give a guy a rest who needs a rest
Absolutely.
because it'll hopefully mean more for us in 3 and 4 weeks' time. You pull the trigger on it. You got to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, like it's they've worked their way into a really good position. They've earned what we've got at the moment, and then obviously now it's all about continuing to build and don't take anything for granted and just keep on keeping on. Don't be complacent. But as you said, recognize and look for opportunities in which we can be clever
Yeah.
and give someone a spell or give Pitto, if he's knocking down the door, give Pitto the opportunity and just be sort of clever with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Even on the other end, I mean, my take on the injury patch early in the year, I don't know what your take is on when it comes to the reasoning for it, whether it was just maybe it was our program, our S&C, or whether it had something to do with opening round. There's a couple of teams who played in that opening round that have been, affected with injury. I think Collingwood's probably coming out of it now. We got hit with it. Having said that, we seem to get hit with it at that early part, halfway part of the year every year. And then, we've come good last year and hopefully this year. But in hindsight, like without it, we probably don't see a lot of Cowan as much as what we would have. We don't see as much of Kemp. Kemp or Cowan used to be dropped, one or the other, in order to fit them all in. So the opportunities come, and I think that in order for you to say, anyone to say we have a deep list, kind of has to be tested and proven. And I think that was the test of what happened.
No, absolutely. And a conversation that I love, it's maybe my favorite conversation in footy when people are talking about teams and why they might be struggling or why results aren't as good as maybe they could otherwise be. My favorite conversation in footy is, oh, your bottom six just isn't good enough. Your bottom six, it's your bottom six.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, I always just laugh and I always go, yeah, but you're not talking about when we were having that injury run, you're not talking about our bottom six. You're talking about players who are like 33rd on the list. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about guys that are, and let's be honest, like every AFL list has X number of guys on it who just sort of aren't at the level at AFL level. And in a lot of cases, they'll be really, really good state league footballers, which is still the second best level of football you can play. It still means you're a good player. But to get some surety out of a guy like Kemp, to get some surety out of a guy like Boyd, to actually kind of look back at different games and think, we do miss Cottrell. We do. Cottrell would have been really handy against the Swans.
Yeah.
To run with a Warner or a Heaney or whoever, or Goulden, whoever it might be, would have been really, really handy to be able to just go running power. You can go with him. And Saad didn't play that night. So again, pick him up in midfield. Little things like that. And what it's exposed us to, which is a positive, as you said, is a few guys who were like people can say what they want about Matty Owies. I think Matty Owies has kicked like 20 goals for the year.
Mate, 100% he has kicked 3 goals on 4 occasions this year.
Like,
he's usually the first one dropped when you talk about who's going to come in and who's going to come out, and it's weird.
For a guy who opposition fans who just talk rubbish about Matty Owies and jumper tugging and whatever, well, he's a sort of no-frills footballer who he's not getting – when Motlop comes back, he's not going out.
No.
Because, again, we spoke about Kemp, but we spoke about TDK. He's that guy who's like, well, no, when the cavalry arrives, it's not my spot they're coming for. And that's not being selfish. It's being like, no, I've got to keep playing good footy if I want to stay in this team. So, yes, the injury problems were really frustrating. Positively, it really only cost us maybe not really the Adelaide game, because I think we were a little bit better placed at that point. That was sort of inaccuracy. I think it cost us Collingwood. Because from memory, McGovern and Saad, and like I think you lose. It's not even the scores conceded; it's how we couldn't move the ball.
Yep.
But to come out of it, having only dropped a couple games more than we would have liked to, and gone Owies, Cowan, Boyd probably less so. We've probably seen a lot of Boyd in the back end of last year. We want to be confident about. TDK is the big one to be like, can you actually be the number one ruckman of a team that has designs on contending for a premiership?
Yeah.
Or do you need chop out? And you're like, no, you don't really. So the learnings have been, it was frustrating. We clearly would have liked to have had no injuries like the Swans and been rolling on. But again, if we can keep on keeping on and head towards the end of the season and get Shearer back and Martin, whatever he's doing, Cunningham played a half on the weekend.
Back to
You know,
Queensland,
March,
the calf specialist.
and back to Queensland, but like, you know, Marchbank was out there on the weekend, little guys that aren't necessarily straight back in the team when you're fit, but pushing up behind, keeping pressure on X, Y, and Z. That's what a healthy list gives you. It gives you options, it gives you competition for spots, it gives you more flexibility. I mean, Fab spoke really brilliantly about the Doc injury being obviously disappointing, but the flexibility that costs you was more than just Sam Docherty goes out of the team. It was like, geez, he went through the middle a few times last year and was like really important for us. Or he could sit on the wing, or he can go to halfback if we need him. Or when Sard and McGovern were out, and thank God Doc's still there, it's okay.
Yeah.
So coming out of it, to have kind of grown in confidence or been able to build some confidence in certain players that you actually might be sticking around. You might not be placeholders. You might not be in the team because player X is out. It's like you actually might just be in the team, has been a positive.
I was going to touch on players who we want to highlight from the weekend, but I think we've covered a lot.
I think it's worth. We sort of mentioned like McGovern, I think, and Kemp shared Cameron, who has terrorised us in the past. We mentioned him again, but the three smalls that took Stengel close and Dalhouse, Ryan Myers.
Dalhouse.
Dalhouse.
That's a blast in the past.
But the Boyd, Sard, and I'm drawing a blank on the third. Boyd, Sard. Who's our third?
Defender?
Sort of Newman, quasi-Newman. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those where I've mentioned too many guys, but those guys were so important. So important. You know, obvious one, Cripps and TDK, clearly. But Matty Kennedy was great.
Do you remember your votes for the game?
Was great. I went TDK, Cripps, and Curnow, and I was going to actually give the one vote to Kennedy, but then Curnow ends up kicking 5. So you're sort of like, he's kicked 5 goals. Kick 5 goals too. Like if we're doing pretty well. I think I was the only one of us who gave him votes, and I was kind of like, that's a luxury. He's kicked 5 goals too, and you can. Does he sneak in for a vote? You know, Harry kick 3? You know, Matty Owies kick 3. There were just so many good contributors. It was such a great team performance.
Well, I'm looking at the coaches' votes now. So Cripps got the 9, De Koning and Walsh 7, Charlie got 4, Cincotta got the 2, and then your boy Matt Kennedy got the 1. I like that.
He played really well.
Yeah, I like that.
Because the top end was really obvious. Like you're sort of in your 9s, and you're from guys. If a couple of boys, as they did, get between 7 and 10, you're sort of going, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Like they were standouts. But it's always good when you get. It'll be interesting to know if it was Voss or Scott. I imagine it was Voss that gave him the 1. But it'd be interesting to know who gave him the 1 because for whatever reason, I mean, we've got a 50% chance to guess. For whatever reason, I suggest it would be Voss to just recognise what a strong role he performed.
I think so. We did the rating show just before. Two players that blew me away with their kilometres ran with Jacob Wiedering and like 15.6 kilometres, and Kemp had run 0.5 or whatever. They both ran over 15 Ks. I've not seen that before from key defenders like that.
I think it's a good recognition too of some of Kemp's might have been to the handovers with Cameron.
Yeah,
Cameron loves to get up the ground, obviously, and it's the thing. And did they kick the goal when he went up the ground and got a couple touches and kicked it inside 50? I can't remember, but like he's an unbelievable player and loves to get up the ground. And then it becomes all about, well, who goes with him? You probably is it Kemp, is it McGovern, who actually goes with him? So there might have been a bit of travel there, but in handover, but. The Wiedering one for me is really good because A, it shows that he can do the Ks, which is great, and B, it shows that they actually recognised Tommy Hawkins he's cooked, and you've got his number. You've beaten him hands down a couple of times in a row now. You've just destroyed him. Exploit him. You know you can beat him. We know you can beat him. They know you can beat him. Go and blow him up.
So true.
And be the outlet when we want to go C-shape. Be the outlet. Be the guy that can stretch the field, because you might not be in a dangerous spot as such, but be in a place that requires someone to come and get you, which then it's the classic soccer thing. Like, it's so funny how long it takes different principles in sport to reach other sports, where you're like, the idea is that the defensive midfielder drops deep to try to collapse the space behind. So Wiedering's a beautiful kick. So put yourself in a spot where maybe you get the ball, and if you get the ball, we know you can use it. But what you're also going to do is be dangerous, and you're going to suck someone with you. And if you're running that amount, like, it wasn't a Blake Acres, Sam Walsh 15Ks, but he would have been doing a lot of stuff behind the ball to shape us, to set us up, and to make sure that we're exactly where we kind of need to be, which is good, to attack or defend. So,
yeah,
if 15K is a lot for a fullback.
That's a lot. I mean, I knew he was fit, and I knew he was a professional and all of that, but it was just a shock to me. Like, some of the heat maps, we saw Nick Newman further up the ground a lot more than what we'd seen in the past. But yeah, the Kemp and Wiedering 15 plus Ks in the game was something that just took me by surprise. And I don't know if it was just because of the conditions of this game on Friday night. I don't know if that's now something we want to, push forward with and utilize. But I mean, you always see Ollie Hollands, Elijah, Walsh, Cottrell, these types in the 15s, Acres every so often. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then speaking of, I'm really enjoying what Elijah Hollands has brought to this team. Paul Sebastiani asked us last week, who does he remind you of? You're pretty good when it comes to just general, I don't know, footy knowledge or trivia. Have we had a guy like
From a
Elijah
Carlton
at the club?
perspective, he's got it's a really good question. There's no one who's like, he's 100% spitting image of, he plays exactly like X. But there are elements of, like, some of his work in, because he's not quick. We all know he's not fast. Like, he's not express pace quick. But even there were a few moments on the weekend where his ability to get off really quick handballs in tight, where it looks like he's jammed up, where it looks like he's under pressure, a little bit Brett Ratney, where he's able to be kind of like, it looks, but he finds space and he's on the move, and he's not moving quickly, but he's on the move and he hits targets.
He's thinking quick.
Yeah, it's this weird one. It's that's like, you move the ball fast, which makes you fast. Yeah, it's a really interesting one of, like, who does he play directly like? But I mean, like, I knew absolutely next to nothing about him when he came across, just because he hadn't played all that much footy for Gold Coast, and he'd done his knee in his draft year. And I think the only thing I could really remember about him was, I reckon he was interviewed in his draft year on SEN, or like his dad was interviewed. And I remember hearing that, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, fair enough, whatever. And then, you put that in the back of your mind, you're on low power mode, and he comes up again, and his brother obviously gets drafted to us, and you're thinking, oh, I think he's the guy his brother was on, he went to the Suns, yeah, okay. But I hadn't really seen a lot of him play. And in that sense, was really kind of open-minded and looking forward to, well, what sort of player is he? And what did he go? Was he pick 6 or 7?
He was exactly right. He was pick 7 in the 2020 draft. He's only just
tough
played
draft, like,
yeah,
in terms of who was doing what and the like, in terms of their NAB league footy and the carnivals and all that kind of. It was a bit of a disastrous year, to be honest, to kind of have a low pick, because there's no, like, and this does happen. Don't get, like, the best player in the draft's not the number one pick, but you get to control who you want to take, and you get to make that decision with as much information as you can possibly have. Whereas in 2020, it was like, you've no information. So obviously highly rated, and he just does a lot of things well. Unbelievably clean. That pickup off his bootlaces was just ridiculous.
Oh, in the fourth quarter, mate.
Unbelievable. He had his use of the ball was great. And then I think, didn't he turn around and he, like, hit up Harry on the lead, makes good decisions. has a bit of Dad and I always laugh. There was a great line in No Country for Old Men where they're talking about. I'm pretty sure it's Javier Bardem's character, but they refer to him as having some hard bark on him. It's like
Yeah,
he's got some hard bark on him, and we sort of say it jokingly, like, but he's got a bit of oomph about him.
he
He's
does.
not.
He
He's a
does.
bit. Jack Martin's a bit like that, where you're like, he's not massive, but he's got a bit of scrap about him. Can get physical, will get physical. He's been one of those great pickups where, obviously, full credit to Nick Austin and co to recognise and isolate. This is a guy who we can get in, relatively speaking, for unders
For nothing.
and will play and he'll make us better. Like, I don't know if Nick Newman was a sauce pickup. He might have been a sauce pickup, but he was like, we got Nick Newman for like a future 4th round pick or something, like just a ludicrous in retrospect. And you just kind of like, great pickup, great acquisition, comes in, makes us better.
Yeah.
Sard, we did give up a pick 8, but it was, like, makes us better. George Hewitt, we bring him in as a free agent on, average coin, makes us better. Blake Acres, we bring in for next to nothing on average coin, makes us better. And Elijah Hollins is that player for this year. Ready to go, comes in, plays like straight away kind of thing,
Totally.
and just improves us. But as for who he is, it's an interesting question. I see
I
a
think
little bit
part of
of
the exercise was that he wasn't like anyone. I think that was what Paul was trying
but
to
like
get at.
you kind of see elements of different players in him that we've
Yeah.
had in the past. But the most important part of it is he just looks like a really good player. It's kind of like we can have fun all we want talking about, who does he play like, who does he remind you of? And it's like Carlton fans haven't been able to say this for a while. He reminds me of just a really good footballer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know,
I want to share my screen and I want to
mhm.
show you the ladder and just zoom out for a moment and just get your take on things. 10-4 after 14 games. What's your take on who's still a threat and who's not a threat in the context of winning it?
Yeah, so it's interesting in the sense that, like, Essendon is such an interesting case because I think they've had a really good draw to this point, and their draw for the rest of the year is pretty good as well. Um, Sydney have got this weird thing about them where it's like they're flying, brilliant football. They're destroying teams. What they did to us, what they did to GWS on the weekend. What they did in coming back against Geelong, just putting teams away really, really quickly. It's powerful. It's really impressive. But if we got them on the MCG, I'd kind of be like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No fear.
No, I'd be still like, that's fine. Like Tim, we were talking about it. They've lost one game this year. They lost to Richmond. Richmond played really well on the day and knocked them over. That was on the MCG. Their last loss before that was to us on the MCG in a match that flattered them. We should have, we were better than they kick a goal with 20 seconds left to bring the margin back to a goal. But we were better value than that on the night. I think we just sort of, what we spoke about earlier, we just sort of went into game saving mode late on, which kind of we had a margin to play with. But they're flying. They're great. They're a great team to watch. They're in good form. They'll be there. They'll be contending. They'll finish top 2. So that means they'll have a home prelim. Just depends who that's against. Fremantle, I think they're a bit like the Gold Coast Suns. The Gold Coast Suns are a 5-goal better team on the Gold Coast.
Yes.
And I think Freo are like the same sort of thing. You get them in Perth, they're a 4 or 5 goal better team in Perth. And it just depends when you get them, where you get them, what their run looks like for the rest of the year. Can they get a home elimination final? If they don't get a home elimination final, I think they go straight out. Having said that, I mean, you look at the ladder, they're only a game outside the 4, so they could win all their games and finish in the 4. Geelong need to straighten up. Port Adelaide are frauds. They're in free fall. They're in absolute all sorts. And then other than that, you look at like Brisbane are probably the most likely team outside the 8 to make a genuine run. Like there's 9 games left. They could finish in the 4. Like, they get their act together.
Yeah.
You know, the
Because
Bulldogs, want to see a little bit more of them. Want to see them, like, talking about, like, with idiots on Twitter about this throughout the week, like writing off Geelong, you know, and it's like 3 or 4 weeks ago, everyone you spoke to, Bevo's done. Bevo's cooked. He's gone. Who's next? Who's the next coach of the Bulldogs? And you go 4 weeks later, David King saying they can win the flag, and you're kind of
yeah.
like, you're sort of
It's
like,
like,
well, maybe the truth is in the middle there somewhere. Maybe we probably can't operate at either end of the extreme. But again, if they can put a little bit of a run together, like they're there or thereabouts, to displace a Geelong or a Port Adelaide, like the Giants are really battling. What are they? Yeah, loss win, loss win. Um, the ones outside the 8 at the moment that are coming are Brisbane and the Dogs.
yeah.
I actually feel like this is a bit of a false economy season for Hawthorn. I reckon this is like, and anyone who's old enough to remember this will remember this. So in 2004, so we finish last in '02, we finished second last in 5, in
Yep.
3.
Mhm.
And then in '04, we get that, like, they call it the Foreign Legion. We get a lot of like fringe AFL players of other lists, and some of them were okay players and decent players. Like Heath Scotland was one of them. He was the best of the lot. Played some good footy for us. Some of them did nothing at all. But what we did was actually the worst thing possible. We finished like 11th or 12th or something, maybe even
In
higher. We won
2004, this was?
10 games.
Right.
So we won 10 games with this cobbled together, more experienced list, rather than going, you know what, just be fucking shit for another year, because we actually need. That was when you could still get genuine priority picks as well. Finish at the bottom again, blood some kids, just bring kids in, give them a full season. Let's see where it goes. I reckon Hawthorn are a bit like that. I reckon Hawthorn will finish 11th or something. And it's like, you guys need to finish. You need key backs, you need key forwards, you need genuine pace in midfield. You actually have so many gaps in your list at the moment that finishing 10th, 11th is so much, it's false economy. You go into an off season, we've won 10 games, we've done this, we finished wherever it was, wherever they end up finishing. Be like, you're better
Yeah.
to finish 16th, 17th, and get a real fucking top line kid. And that's just the SARS there in the chat. No one wants the team to finish last, but if you handle the developing year right and you play your kids and you get games into guys and you give them some exposure, what is that worth in the long run for them? Hopefully it's good. We spoke earlier about blooding guys too young. You don't want to do that as such, but hopefully it's a good thing. But in the long run, for us, 2004, finishing wherever we finished, winning 10 games, was actually bad. It didn't help us at all. And we all got
Yeah.
excited because we won 10 games, and we all thought, oh, next year we'll do this and next year we'll do that. We finished last.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, we wasted a year.
And
In
you
a
think that's
way.
where Hawthorn's at right now? Similar.
I just got a feeling that they're having a really good year and they're playing some really good footy, and they're probably exceeding the expectations of their fan base, and they're giving their fans something to cheer about. But as we've shown, as Melbourne showed, there's another example I can't think of. It's off the top of my head. I keep on forgetting it. Builds they don't take 3 years. Rebuilds don't take 3 years.
No.
They take a decade. And there's proof of it. We didn't play finals for 10 years. Brisbane didn't play finals for something like 9 years before they made it eventually. Melbourne didn't play finals for 9 years or something. You don't just turn around in 2 draft and trade periods and we're good to go. Here we go.
Yeah, this is us.
And I think that Hawthorn are brilliant, playing some brilliant footy. They've won some great games, playing some great footy. But I just wonder if in the long run, and this is something that I could be completely wrong and it could not matter. But you're just sort of going, I just don't know what it means for them in the long run. But yeah, for me, look, Brisbane are playing really, really well. They'll finish in the 8. The
Yeah.
Dogs are obviously an excellent chance. And the obvious ones to fall out at the moment would be Port Adelaide. And then the Cats and the Giants are probably teams that can play better football than they are, and they need to pull the nose up. I think they probably can pull the nose up. But it'll be fascinating. I mean, the dream scenario is that Essendon fall out of the 8, the arse falls out of them, and they just
Imagine.
tumble down. Because you sort of look at them and you're like, even on the weekend, West Coast are playing a lot better football this year, but in the back, the last 4 or 5 weeks as they get their senior experience core back, that's another thing that I always laugh about, this idea that, like, West Coast resurgence was driven by kids. And you're like, no, it's driven by their premiership players from 2018.
Being healthy again, McGovern,
Being healthy
Jones.
again. Like, that's why they're playing better football. You're like, they're not like, they're better players and they're better performing players, with the exception of Harvey Reid, are all premiership players who are just putting together a bit of an Indian summer sort of season. Or, Jake Waterman playing. Is that his name? Jake Waterman? Playing out of the box.
Waterman? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, to be fair, it is so even that someone will make a run like we did and the Giants did. Someone will tumble out like we did in 22.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of waiting, like, who are those teams going to be?
Yeah. I think for the first time, ever. Sorry, let me start again. I had repressed and pushed away the thought of, one day we'll be there to experience Carlton winning a flag. And I just pushed it away because we were so far away, to be fair. Now, more than ever, I genuinely believe we can do it. Does your mind go there too? Because that's all we want. That's all we want. We want to experience that day with our fathers, our mothers, our brothers, our sisters, our inner circle. We all want to be there the day we win the flag, and we're all just kind of waiting for that day to return, and it's utopia. Does your mind go there yet, or is it too early to dream a bit?
Yeah, and this is the other thing that we spoke about, rival fan bases completely missing the point. I had a chat with this Richmond nuffy a couple of weeks ago now, and he kept on saying, "You'd trade anything to have what we had," and I was like, "Yeah, I absolutely, yeah, I probably would trade finishing on the bottom for winning flags. You're quite right." Yeah. I was like, kind of going, oh, he goes like, "You don't understand what I'm saying." I said, "No, you're saying that, like, I would rather win flags than finish in the bottom 2 for a decade." Go, yeah, that's correct. I would take that. And that's why you follow a team. You follow a team for, the flip side of that, of course, is you follow a team for the dividend that comes when your team wins good matches or big matches or has good wins, and you invest in following your team through thick and thin to experience the Sydney final, and obviously the Melbourne final is this incredible moment, great, one of the all-time great finishes in a final, like in history. One of our all-time great finishes. And the idea that you can't enjoy that because you don't win the flag.
Yeah.
Oh, it didn't mean anything because you lost the next week, so it's pointless. And you're just like, that's why you follow your team. You follow your team to enjoy the 9-goal last quarter against a team that has so long been your master that a generation of your fans have seen take you to the cleaners every time you play them. And you do it, you follow your team to watch, Blake Acres' goal, for everyone who was there. I've told the story lots and lots of times. So the stuff that I do with Box Hill, we were playing a prelim we were. It was the next day on the Gold Coast. So I flew up the next morning. But when I got to the ground, there's a couple of Carlton fans in the team, but there were like a couple of our coaches and a couple of the players. I met them at the ground. And they just came up, they know Follow the Blues, and they just came up and said, "What was it like?" They all watched it in the hotel on the big screen in the mess room, in the team meeting room, had dinner and put the game on, and as a group of 25 or whatever it was, watched the footy and whatnot. And they were just, it was literally like, what was it like? And Collingwood had the great moment, the next week they have a great win against the GWS, and they have a great win in the grand final, win the flag. Only one team wins the flag. That doesn't mean that the other 17 teams can't take a modicum of enjoyment or satisfaction or a memory. Like, I love that Melbourne game. For me, the thing you mentioned, like looking forward and thinking about stuff, what I think about is when the siren went against the Demons, or even before that, like, you get the goosebumps of, I remember looking at the clock on the AFL app when TDK smothers and the ball goes forward and Chera competes for it, and you're thinking, just lock it up, just lock it up. There's 15 seconds left, just lock it up, and then it squirts out. And I'm getting goosebumps. I remember turning to Dad and just going, "We've won." And the feeling of being able to do that with Dad, who I've gone to games with for 30 years, on grand final day, whether it's this year, next year, in 5 years' time, the feeling of being able to do that for something that we're so passionate about and share with one another. And there'd be people in the chat that are exactly the same. There'd be Collingwood fans, Essendon fans, everyone who would have this relationship with someone and the footy. The feeling of being able to share that again would be incredible. And that's what you all follow your team for. You follow your team to see your team win, and you follow your team to see your team win premierships. But everyone has someone they share it with, whether it's a brother, a sister, a mum, a dad, someone at work, whoever it is, listeners, people who watch this. And to be able to share that with people who listen to us or people who watch your show would be great.
Yeah.
But to be able to share that with Dad, who I go to the football with every single week and who I sit down to watch our games with if we're interstate every single week, yeah, like you fast forward and you think, when the day comes, we eventually, hopefully, win our flag. Like just, yeah, you imagine the scenes outside the ground and
Do you believe
back
they
on
can do
Ligo.
it? Do you
This
think we
year?
can do it? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is it. This is again something you have to correct in a conversation.
Yeah.
Us sitting here and saying we can win the flag is not us sitting here and saying, give us the cup.
Yeah.
It's us saying, yeah, we can win the flag. If things go our way, if availability is good, if we can handle the big occasion, that's why winning those finals last year is so important. The idea of making the finals was great, but to be able to cross off winning a final and then back it up, win another final, and then play on preliminary final weekend. So if you're good enough to get there again, it's not a secret. It holds no fear. We've been there. We've played on this day before, blah, blah, blah. That's why all like last year's final campaign, to make it after where we were was so good.
Yeah.
But to actually to actually do some damage was actually like, it wasn't good. It was so important.
Yeah.
That
it was crucial.
we didn't lose to Sydney and walk away and go, bad luck, boys. We gave it a shake. We got there and didn't work out for us on the night. And, we'll try again next year. We'll think about it all summer and have to go again next year. It was like, no, you won, and then you won again, and then you played on a prelim. There's no secrets about what that all means. So, of course, we can win the flag. We need to play well. We need to maintain the rage. We need to maintain our intensity. We need to get some luck with injury and availability. You need to get some luck with the draw.
Yeah.
Like going back, what was it? Last year we lost in Brisbane. In 13, we lost in Sydney. In 11, we lost in West Coast.
West Coast.
In 10, we lost in Sydney. In 2001, that was the last final. 2001 was the last final series for us that ended in Melbourne.
Really? Who do we play?
So, Richmond.
Oh, right. Is that where we had the injuries on the day?
That was where Ray Hall cannoned into Kuda's knee. We lost it. It was the first game. Would have been a Friday night game. I'm pretty sure it was a Saturday. It was played after September 11. It was the week of September 11. So it was played after that. It was really eerie and sort of weird. And there was like a moment's silence for that. And then Frawley and the Tigers just sort of turned it into a bit of a scrap, and it was a pretty low scoring sort of game, and we just never really got going. But the point I'm making is it's hard to win interstate. It's hard to win finals interstate because generally you're playing better teams. So if you can control your destiny to the point where you're at home and you get the benefit of the big crowd and you get the benefit of your own bed and blah, 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 all those little, we spoke about it, margins.
Yeah.
The margins when you try to win the flag are so fine. You need so much stuff to go your way, and then you need to be good enough to take the opportunity when it comes your way. So we can win the flag, but we have to play brilliantly. We have to get a bit of luck. We have to all that kind of stuff.
That's so good. Even just to hear and see people believe it, I think speaks volumes as to where we've come from. And we don't say it lightly. It's not said lightly.
No. And that's
Yeah.
again, like, people just think, oh, you're Nuffy fans and you think you're
No,
going to
no.
you're arrogant and you think you're going to just roll in. You go, no. If any
No.
fan base, Melbourne certainly did, if any fan base values and has had to eat shit sandwiches and values like how hard it is to get to where you want to be to actually contend for a premiership, us,
Yeah.
we had to eat. We had, like, you think about all the humble pie we had to eat. We were the last team to embrace the draft because we thought you didn't need the draft. We're arrogant. You don't need to do it. We don't use the draft. We don't rebuild. We got the big, deservedly, because we were breaching the salary cap. We got the big fines and the picks taken off us. We plumbed the depths for 5 years there. We got Judd. We were a little bit better. Drafted horribly, developed horribly, managed our list badly. We're terrible for about 5 or 6 more years. It's like, no, we get it. We get how hard it is.
Yeah.
We genuinely value and appreciate how difficult it is to get yourself and how brilliantly so many people have worked and to get us into a position where we can have these designs of we're good enough to win the flag if we're good enough to take the opportunities we get. Like you mentioned earlier, you made the point about, like, what was it? Where did you say it? It was sort of like, not having seen the team be this good or something. Like this idea of like, so many people haven't actually seen Carlton be so good.
Yes.
Because we haven't been, again, people say, oh, you've been terrible for 30 years. And it's like, we played in the grand final in 99. We were the second best team in 2000. In 2001, we finished fifth, but I think we were probably like the second or third best team. We had a few injuries, came apart for us. Would have been the most hilarious premiership of all time because the arse fell out of us immediately. We would have won the flag. We were in 2001. If we could have held our better team together for the finals, like, we could have won the flag. And then we would have just been shit immediately.
Right.
It would have been the most unbelievable, like, from the very top to the bottom in the blink of an eye. It was really extraordinary. So I remember turning up in '02, bearing in mind in '01, we were a really good team. And we were awful. Like, straight away. Awful. It was kind of like, we were like a decent shout of winning the premiership 2 games ago, and we are now the worst team in the competition. Unbelievable. But that's how fickle it is, and that's how we sit here at 10-4 and we're second on the ladder. That's how fickle it is, how difficult it is. That's how quickly things can change. So we value it. We understand that. We recognize it. And I think the important thing is to just, like, enjoy how we're going. Enjoy that the team's playing good football, reliable football, and that they seem to recognize like we're close.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be fair, if that's good enough to win the flag, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality. You look at Brisbane, you're like, you lose a grand final by a kick. You've been there or thereabouts for a couple of years earlier. On your day, your best is good enough to win the flag. And then the flip side of that, you look at Richmond, great team, fantastic run. But the best part about their run is while they were in the window, they made every poster winner. They won every grand final. They won all 3 they played in. And you're like, they still would have been the team they were if they won 1 of the 3.
True.
But they took the opportunities they had. They won all 3. And you go, that's fantastic. Brisbane haven't been able to win 1. And you're like, they've been a great team for years. And maybe it's just not quite good enough to win them a flag. But they were a kick away from doing it. It's kind of this feast or famine reaction that a lot of people have, is that it's that Ricky Bobby, you're first or you're last. And it's like, no, you might be second. Like,
consistently.
You might be second, and that means you're a good team. Yeah. So lots of stuff still to be done. It's great what we're doing at the moment. Hopefully we're good enough to continue.
I've got to say, there's a guilty pleasure that I have, and that's watching you just fly the flag for the club to the opposition supporters on Twitter. It is just, sometimes it's just a cup of tea, phone out, and watch you just throw that meme out. Which one is it? Try and make this is not about
don't make everything about Collingwood challenge. So there is, if you see, to anyone who isn't across it, just as a bit of fun, if you see someone on Twitter who is making a conversation about football or anything, to be fair, about Collingwood, just tag us, because I basically all I do is I come in and I just respond to their tweet with a GIF of an F, like a fail, and yeah, just try not to make everything about Collingwood challenge, because there's a couple of repeat offenders who the conversation could literally be about anything. It could be about the drop-in pitch at the Gabba, and they'll find some way to make it about Collingwood, and
It's
it's
amazing.
just. But yeah, like it is good fun, and I do find like sometimes I am guilty of just put the phone down, but sometimes it's just fun. Like it's just the amount of nuffy bullshit that Richmond fans who are just it's like be happy your team you've witnessed, if not the greatest era of your club, the greatest era of your club since the late '60s.
Yeah.
Going fantastic, you were great, but it's over.
Yeah.
Like it's over for you guys. You're gonna have to do what every other club did and go back down to the bottom and make the long, arduous, painful climb out of the pit. And it's like, why are you mouthy? I don't
Yeah.
understand why you're mouthing off at us.
It's weird. It's weird. But
And then you
hey,
got Collingwood, man. Collingwood, you got their insecurities are a psychological condition of their own. Like honestly, the little brother syndrome they have. You won the flag.
yeah.
Like you won. Like you won the flag, guys. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Why are you constantly comparing yourselves to us or trying to like? I think, and I've said this before, I think that Collingwood were, and it was so fascinating. I think a large section of their fan base, particularly the inbred hicks on Twitter, were genuinely put out that no one really cared they won the flag.
Yeah.
Everyone was just sort of like, yeah, it was a great game of footy. You were the best team all year and you won the game. You were premiers. No arguments here. Oh, you're crying about it. You're like, no,
No, I'm not.
no, I'm not. Yeah, you
Daily
are. Like,
yeah.
no.
We're sitting here watching daily reminders. I'm like,
It's like no one
really?
cares that you won. You won.
Really?
We all saw it. Like we all lived through it. We all saw it. It's like no one
Yeah.
cares that you. Um, it is. Yeah, it is funny because people. The one I've had recently, which I've really liked, is with the Richmond guys who they keep dancing around the whole free kick differential thing, and I keep on saying to them, what you're saying, but you all realize it's too stupid to say out loud, is that you think there's a conspiracy. You think that the AFL are actively umpiring you differently because you've given me data on here's these spreadsheets that show that we get less free kicks and our opponents concede less free kicks against us than they do against anyone else. So it's kind of like, well, why do you think that is? I don't know. You go, well, that's not how a conversation works. You don't just say, we get screwed by the umpires. And then when someone goes, why do you think that is? Say, I don't know. But you all think that there's a conspiracy against you, but you don't want to say it because you realize that makes you look like a lunatic.
All about it here. Ground your statements in evidence.
It's just bizarre. It's like there's a lot of very special people on Twitter.
There is.
Unfortunately, and I'm more than happy to talk to all of them.
It's I've got to take my hat off to you. It's incredible. I don't have the patience for it, but you know what? Someone's got to fly the flag. I think we're in a really healthy spot where the Blues are playing well and you are just teeing off on Collingwood, Richmond, Melbourne. It's great.
But then the fun of it is too, like if we won the flag, if we were good enough to win the premiership, everyone sees how this ends. Everyone knows the accounts.
Yeah.
Everyone's up for banter and back and forth and whatever. But the fun of it is all these guys would disappear. And we all know they disappear.
We'd be blocked.
You'd be blocked. Or they just deactivate because they go, I'm going to get hammered. I'm going to get smashed with these fucking photos every day. And then they would be like, oh, you're just sad. You're just sad. And you're like, no, we're just taking the piss out of them because they did it. Like, it's the fun of it. And like I said, there's just a lot of very strange people out there who I think the worst thing that they do, be passionate about your footy team, be passionate about whatever it might be. But like, don't make it your entire personality.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Collingwood probably more than Richmond have a lot of fan bases, a lot of fans in their fan base who have actually tied their sense of self-worth to their football team. And you're like, while the team's good, while the going's good, that is great.
You're a
Because
winner.
you're a winner. You're a winner. Go when you're bad, going, how's this going to your sense of self-worth and value as a person being tied to this entity you have no control over, you can't influence, will just hit the skids. Going, and it's actually like dangerous. But that's how they live, and that's what they do. It's like, not to veer off track, but it's like did anyone see that Taylor Swift thing with Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters the other day? Dave Grohl had said something about how they're playing live and insinuated that Taylor Swift doesn't play live and blah, blah, blah. And basically now, like, these armies of just idiotic Swifties are attacking the Foo Fighters.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, Dave Grohl doesn't give a shit. Dave Grohl was in Nirvana and he's now in the Foo Fighters. He has more money than he could spend in 50 lifetimes. He's had more success than any of you put together could ever dream of having. He doesn't care. But you've got these people, you've got these Swifties who are so invested in their idol, just like these Collingwood fans are so invested in, like, as I said, their self-worth being tied to their football club. And it's like, well, what happens if we beat you? Like, where do you go from there? Where do you
giving us motivational quotes about taking the stairs when you're
this is it, mate. And firstly, the fucking documentary was called "Take the Steps." The phrase is "Take the fucking stairs, fly, you idiot." It's "take the stairs." No one says "take the steps." What does that even mean? Don't even get me started on McRae. Honestly, some of the stuff that guy says is the sort of stuff you would expect to hear at the huddle in an under-14s game.
Yeah.
Fair play to him. I just want to say to any Collingwood people tuning in, listening, or who will find this and clip this, he's done a wonderful job for your football club. He's won you a premiership. No one can ever take that away from him. He's obviously coaching the team very, very well. The connection piece and then what he's brought to the football club has been absolutely outstanding. Again, what makes it fascinating to me is having had some exposure to this sort of stuff and different coaches and different coaches' philosophies. It's such a fine line between everything that he's done since he's been in the job at Collingwood, bringing the success it has, which is great for the Collingwood Football Club, and just coming out like a fart in church. Like, honestly, some of the stuff he kind of talks about, and you're just going, what are you? It's like, what? It's like, this could fail to such an extent that a Scott Pendlebury, a Steel Sidebottom, Jack Crisp, your more experienced players just went, this guy's a lunatic.
Yeah.
Or this guy's like it. But to his credit, it has worked, and that's all it needs to do, etc. The fascinating thing about McRae, again, contrasted with Voss, is he hasn't actually really faced any adversity.
Yeah. They haven't been in a hole, have they?
Like, and again, full credit to him, because they've managed their affairs in such a way they haven't been exposed to it. But he hasn't had like you've won one game in 2 months run.
Yeah.
Why is it not working? He hasn't had to face that. And on the occasions they have faced a bit of adversity, the cracks are like fault lines. And you can see him after that Geelong game when he was saying, like, his exhausted players were sitting on the field and he was like, we don't sit down, we're not losers. And you're just like, what? No, what are you talking about? It's just like the one against there's examples there where you're just like, he will be such an interesting case when the wheel kind of turns and things, as it happens for all clubs, kind of go south. Because full credit to him, we spoke about Voss at length last year and how he was under the pump and how he was facing, like, he was staring the fucking unemployment line in the eye.
It's been admitted as well, yeah.
And full credit to him to be able to pull the nose up and to. We spoke at times on the show last year when we were really going badly, and it was like, don't let it end like this. Don't go down like this.
Yeah.
And to his credit, the way that he maintained his dignity and the way that he managed the club and his personal affairs throughout all of that spoke volumes of his character, spoke volumes of, how committed he was. And in retrospect, you look back and go full credit to the guy because they were able to turn things around.
Yeah.
And I think McRae's had that. Like, he hasn't been exposed to the criticisms. He hasn't been exposed to the days and days and days of talk back about whether or not you're up to the job. It's a really fascinating watch, and that's why I talk about emotion earlier in the episode. If we can beat them, if we're good enough to beat them, if we're good enough to get over the line against them, that could be that ripple moment of. I'll use the example, like, getting off track a bit, but we do this thing on our Patreon where we've started doing like watch alongs, where we'll pick like a quarter of a good match and we'll just do a little watch along. We did one ages ago with you did one with us with the final against Richmond in 13. And one of the games we're going to do this,
wow.
that was like
going
4 or 5 years ago. And we
Yeah.
thought just to mix it up, we'll do a different sort of thing. And so for this week's Richmond episode, we're going to watch a game in 95 where we played, and it was round 14. Like, I don't know if we were top of the ladder and Richmond was second, or if it was like second versus third, or what the situation was with the ladder, but it was a top of the ladder clash at the MCG. The game was meant to be at Princess Park. It got moved because it was Harry Madden's 300th and it was top of the table. There was 85,000 people there. It was unbelievable. We were 2 points up at three-quarter time. Tigers started the last quarter well, got a couple of points. Scores were level. And then the guys that won us the game were Kernahan kicks 2 in the last quarter. I think Bradley kicked 2 in the last quarter. We kicked 5 goals to none. And what won us the game was these experienced, well-travelled, hardened sort of players. And Michael Voss, as a player, was that.
Yeah.
And Michael Voss, as a coach, didn't look like that until he did. And that's that thing where you go, if we can get over the mental hurdle that is Collingwood are the reigning premiers, they've got a good recent record against us, they've beaten us in a couple of heartbreakers recently. If we can get over that hurdle, I think it could be a real seismic changing of the guard in the two clubs dynamic.
That's the changing of the guy that we're after, isn't it?
Because we used to have that, like in the 90s and whatever. We had Kernahan and Bradley and Williams, and Kuda was coming through, and Stephen Silvani and Andy Mackay was there, and Peter Dean, and the list goes on. And we just had experience, and we just beat them because we were a bit more experienced than them, we were a bit more hardened than them. And once we arrested the slide or the momentum or the differential in the two teams win and loss, we kind of had their number for a couple of years, and that's what they've done to us recently. They've just got our number.
Yeah.
So that if we can shift it, what it says to us, what it says to them, I think the dynamic becomes really fascinating for us. So that's the one in a couple of weeks, isn't it? It's shaping up as a big one. It could be
around 20. Yeah, it's a Saturday night. It's like the 3rd of August or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like a real, like, it means a lot.
Yep. It's going to be a lot of feeling, a little tension in the crowd.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, we just wait and see for that one, but it's going to be really interesting. We spoke about having taken heart from the Essendon game, King's birthday, having sort of atoned for a really bad performance, having done it against Geelong now. Collingwood's another one in that where they've got us recently a couple of times where we just haven't quite recognised the occasion, and they have. So can we measure up to that, and can we turn the tables? That's what's going to be so important about it.
In line to be 400th. Well, that'll be interesting.
But you know what this is for me as well? Burst the bubble.
Changing of the guard.
Think about it. Collingwood's 125th anniversary game was against us. We beat them. Their 100th anniversary was against us. We beat them. They have this knack of wanting these big games against us. Fantastic, because big games are great rivals. But we've got a knack of winning those big games, like historically. So I think the Tigers had an anniversary game against us and we beat them as well, 10 or 15 years ago. So if it's Pendle's 400th, I say brilliant. I say
Even
great.
Better. Even better,
because all the story all week will be about him, and it's the easiest. Hawthorn did it. They spoke openly about it with Dusty's 300th. All the talks about him, no problems at all.
Yeah.
So again, that's about owning the mentality piece and growing up as a team and being prepared to recognize what's on the line and get the job done.
Yeah. Sunday, we'll end on Sunday. Thoughts, Richmond team selection changes? You're making any? You're leaving it? We don't have
Chera's
an
the
injury
interesting
report
one.
update. We get that tomorrow.
Yeah, Chera's the interesting one. I don't think Chera plays in the twos,
Yeah,
rightly or
agreed.
wrongly. I don't think they bring him back in the twos. Motlop did some okay things on the weekend. I was only really able to watch the first half of the twos game, and he did some nice things, and they put him up on the ball a little bit to get him involved, which was good. But he's now played, I think it's 3 games back, which
Yep.
is good. We mentioned Pito, obviously, earlier, given Nankervis is a different type of ruckman, more experienced, more seasoned, sort of hardened, bigger body. He obviously got through the twos. No Lynch is handy, even
Is
though
that
he's
confirmed? He did a hammy?
yeah. It's good. They reckon he'll miss 2 at least. So no Lynch is handy just from I think they'll play bolt or forward.
Yeah,
You actually gave us a bit of a grief last time
he
we
did.
played, but
He did.
Chera's the one. For me, it's Chera, Motlop, and Pito. I think would be the names that come up. Does Motlop force Fantasia out? Does Chera force Fantasia out?
It sounds like a Chera.
I think Chera's the most likely of that trio to come in.
Yeah.
But equally, I wouldn't be surprised if the one criticism I will have, having given them a pat on the back with S&C, is you can't get too conservative, and I think that they may be getting a little bit conservative.
With
So
someone like a
Chera hasn't
Motlop or
yeah,
Chera?
so Chera hasn't played since round 10,
Mm,
so it'll be like 7, close enough 7.5 odd weeks since he did the hamstring.
yeah.
So the question is, yeah, are they just if he's fit, play him. Like don't go, we'll give him 1 more for safety. You know, it's like when you
Yeah.
check the oven 5 more minutes and it's like, if it's ready, it's ready.
It's hot enough.
It's hot enough, 5 more, give it 5 more minutes. If he's fit, play him. It's as simple as that. If he's not, part of me just wonders will they err on respectfully to Richmond, obviously had their challenges, had their battles at the moment. Will they err on 1 more week? 1 more week. Give him 1 more. We've got Greater Western Sydney the next week in GWS. Give him 1 more. But yeah, Pito, Chera, Motlop at the 3. And then for the outs, obviously Fantasia. Durden was the sub again. So, the sub's obviously always going to be in a bit of trouble. But other than that, it's a hard one to kind of pick who are the outs.
Yeah. You heading in?
Yeah, absolutely. So weird one, because what time on Sunday is it?
Sunday, 3:20 PM.
Weird.
Very. It's like not the
Yeah,
graveyard
weird.
shift, but it is. Like,
Yeah, it's a
oh, we
weird.
have a full complement because there's no more buys. Everyone's had the same amount of games.
Yeah,
So
but
like
it's
we have
just the
a
320 game for Carlton and Richmond. Like, obviously, the AFL probably recognise that Richmond aren't what they were 3 and 4 years ago. But at the same time, it's like 320 on a Sunday. It's a bit of I just thought it was an odd time. For whatever reason, I just assumed, and I've got no idea why I assumed this. I thought it was Saturday night.
right.
Really, it doesn't matter. I mean, what are we? We're picking hairs over what time the game is. But look, fingers crossed. We can get out there, and for us now, it's again respectfully get the job done. But if we can get the job done and we can do it comfortably, this is where you need to start kind of insulating yourself percentage-wise. The priority
Yeah.
is always to win. Richmond ran us really, really close in round 1 and gave a really good account of themselves and have shown that their best footy is good. But if we can win and if we can do it well, I think our percentage jumped by like 5 odd,
Yeah. Exactly
which was
right.
massive. So we can sort of get the win, absolutely. But if there's the opportunity to kind of build some percentage and build some insurance, that's important. No complacency, can't take any opponent lightly. But if the opportunity is there to kind of do a job and do it well, we need to be pretty ruthless. And they're coming off a bye as well, so they'll be fresh. What does that mean for them? Is that a positive? Are they rusty? Who knows? But look, the
No, I want
opportunity is
like
there
a
to.
party time, 2011 Carlton, Judd kicks it from like 50, that type of day. That's the kind of day
Oh
I'm
yeah,
looking for.
and that's the thing, isn't it? Again, where people watch this, don't they? And they dine out for the clips where there's the cocky Carlton fan saying we're going to beat them by 80, and it's like, no, probably not. Like
Just
you
win.
guys are, Richmond are 17th, I think, aren't they? And they've played some bad footy, they've played some good footy. They're getting some guys back who are important for them. They know, they're going to get up for this game. They know that it's a big test and there'll be a good crowd in, and we're going to have to be really good to take care of business. But fingers crossed, once again, if the opportunity is there to do it well, fingers crossed we can be ruthless enough to put the foot down. But Richmond are interesting like that. Who knows what we're going to get? Who knows what we're going to get out of them? At their beat Sydney, against Hawthorn, they were not great. They've had some real ups and downs, but just as well, they've had some games where you walk away from them thinking, it's pretty good. That's not bad. That'll trouble some teams. Hopefully, we're just not that team.
Mm-hmm. Sean Peter Budge, it has been a pleasure.
I agree.
I really enjoyed that. That was cathartic.
That was good. It was good to talk. In the past, we've done different chats when the going's been bad.
Yeah.
So it was sort of refreshing to have an opportunity, like we said off the top, where you live the cycle of being, a poor team.
Yeah.
And made that weird sort of thing where, and again, I hope the listeners understand, the viewers understand, is that just because something's easier to do doesn't mean it's better to do. It's so much better to talk about a team that's flying.
Yeah.
But we're in this funny kind of phase as people who talk about the Blues with microphones in front of us, where it's good fun at the moment.
Mate,
it's good fun
this is why we were screaming and shouting and like angry, and like these days are what we kind of begged for. And I've had this sort of inner dialogue with myself. It's like, oh, they're good, they're reliable. You can never guarantee a premiership. I hope that we're going to win a premiership. All you can really hope for is that your team are contending or in the mix to win the premiership. It's like all I ever wanted was to talk about this type of Carlton Football Club, and it's like, how do you just enjoy it? Because that's the task ahead.
And without wanting to get sidetracked again, but you look at the situation Adelaide are in, and they're not too dissimilar, with some disquiet. And Adelaide are unique, being a two-team town, very parochial media over there, and 5AA is basically like the Crows' official media channel. But what they're talking about in terms of recruiting and development and coaching and where are we, like these are conversations that every team in that position has. We had them. And you're not having them, because Schadenfreude, because you love pain and misery. You're having them because you want your team to be better. And that's what you long for. You long for your team to be better and in the window and contending and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, Adelaide fans are having it at the moment, just like we had it in the last couple of years. But again, it doesn't mean that everything's a given. You just hope that everyone down there is working to make things better. And in our case, Brian Cook's done a great job. Obviously, Nick Austin's doing a good job. Obviously, Voss has turned things around, which is great. And, for the first time in a really, really long time, Carlton people can have sort of great confidence that the people steering the ship don't just have their, what am I trying to say? They don't just have like the best interests of the club at heart. Like everyone's down there at North Melbourne, everyone's working just as hard as the people at Carlton and Sydney.
Yeah.
And just like when we were down the bottom, everyone at Carlton is working just as hard as the team at the top to make us better. It just takes so long to get there, and you make so many mistakes along the way that when you get to a position that we are in at the moment, it just makes it so much fun to sort of revel in the performance on Friday night, and fingers crossed what the boys can serve up on Sunday.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, hey, we'll enjoy it. We'll be here.
Hopefully win. Hopefully.
For those who aren't aware, I mean, surely everyone listening is at least aware of you. The Prendercast.
Some of the things we say are very, very stupid.
Don't we all? 6 years in the game, you think you're going to get more. Yeah, I would definitely say I get more wrong than right. I've moved to this space of I'm done trying to like predict, guess. I don't even know. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I just hope for the best and enjoy.
You know what it is too, and hopefully that people understand this who are like listening and watching, and whether you're in the Carlton community or another community, another different team. It's not like super duper easy to come up with stuff to talk about every single week
Yeah.
and be kind of like consistent. Maybe sometimes I think most people are pretty good, but like it's harder than it looks to actually kind of put yourself out there and have an opinion on something, whatever that thing might be, and then be held to that opinion. Like it's pretty easy to sort of sit back and take pot shots at the one out of every five opinions that you don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And in our place where we've come from so far back and we've had to improve and do so many things so much better, you know, we're going to be wrong along the way. The club's going to be wrong along the way. They're going to make decisions hoping they're right and that are going to ultimately turn out to be wrong. Just as we're going to make, I mean, Tim always brings up on us the famous thing about when I said that Charlie was battling and might need a stint in the twos, and the next week he kicks 7. And it's like we joke about it and we play it up, but it's like he wasn't playing well. He could have an opinion on something.
Yeah.
No one's happier than me the next week against. I think I'm pretty sure it was against the Bulldogs. It was like he kicked 7. No one was cheering louder than me for every single one of them.
Yeah.
And as you say, when you're having an opinion on something, sometimes you're going to be just ludicrously wrong.
Yeah. Mate, emotions get in the way. Whatever's going on in our lives gets in the way. We all watch it from a different lens. We all want the same thing, but we all communicate it in a different way. You know?
And that's it. And that's why footy is, so good, isn't it? Is that like doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your job is, what your background is, what your beliefs on A, B, and C are. If you walk into the MCG on Sunday wearing navy blue, you're all in it together.
Yeah.
If you walk in wearing yellow and black, you're all in it together. It's this really uniting, really kind of valuable experience, and to sort of sit here and obviously got the live chat going, and we've got our Patreon thing going, which is great. We're all, you mentioned it, we're all wanting the same thing.
We're all contributing towards the same thing, man. Yeah.
And what that is a footy team that plays good footy wins more often than it loses, and fingers crossed holds the cup up at the end of the year.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
we'll see you all on Lygon Street if that happens,
mate. I've just put the link to your Patreon in the chat.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you.
Those of you who are watching, or if you're listening to this later, or if you're watching it afterwards, patreon.com/the Ian Prender _cast. Tell us a little bit about it. $5 a month. What does that get you?
So we sort of just and I think the most fun or the most pleasing part about it is, and you would know too, there are various little costs and overheads and fees and subscriptions to running this, which are not like they're not exorbitant in and of themselves. But when you've done it for 5 and 6 years, it's easy to look back and be like, whether it be microphones or mixers or podcast subscription services or whatever it might be. So we just wanted to sort of go, it's more for if you want to contribute, if you're a listener of the show. But then we do like we do a mailbox, and then we do a weekly kind of on a Wednesday night, a segment or a show about that week's opponent, which will either be talking about good wins and bad losses against them, just like a trip down memory lane, which is as cathartic and excruciating as it can oftentimes be enjoyable. And then recently we've sort of done we're going to sort of do a few of those watch-alongs where we pick games and just watch a quarter from a game and just chew the fat about it and share memories of that team and that era and that time and whatnot. So you get the main show a day early than usual, a bonus show during the week. There's a cool little message board as well, which is good fun, where people sort of we've sort of sold it as Twitter, but without the opposition nuffies.
It's so just it's the Prendercast, the Carlton echo chamber.
This is it. If you just want to talk about us and whatnot, without the nutties on Twitter coming in, you might want to say something about the Blues and all of a sudden you're an idiot.
Mm.
You get a drive-by from someone who has no business being in the conversation. You don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, just a bit of fun, little community, which we're having a lot of fun doing. So, yeah, thank you very much for plugging that. Really appreciate it.
No, of course. No, you should be mate, you should be rewarded for your efforts. I mean, I understand. I mean, because of the video element here, I mean, Adobe, Canva, like all of these services that used to be very cheap and very free.
Mm,
It's just the
mm.
nature of the world. We live in a subscription world. It is what it
How
is.
bad's
I'm very
Adobe? Like, Adobe
mate,
recently is
mate.
outrageous.
It's crazy. It's
Like, even
crazy.
some of the elements of their subscription model are actually kind of like, they are technically legal, but you kind of
Yeah,
like,
you have to pay
I
it.
think, no, but it's like, I think you're sort of, the way they clamp you into their models and and various subscription fees for like stock and the Adobe Suite stuff, it's actually kind of like probably unethical how they're running these subscription services where you're like,
Yeah,
I should just be able to opt out whenever I want. And it's like, no, you got a cancellation fee and you can't do it by this. And some of it as well is really misleading as to what you're signing up for. It's quite funny and it's gotten quite dear. And
yeah.
then all the other things, like you said, it does add up over time. So,
No,
like I said,
absolutely.
it was just a sort of a little thing of um, recouping a little bit of that, and then doing a little bit more on the side, and um, the bigger community then becomes a smaller community, inside the Patreon, which is good fun. So, um, it's all good to take the temperature in the chat room here and there and be like, this is like 99.9% reasonable.
Yeah.
Like
It's
this
amazing
is
when
ref-
you find your
like
people that you want
It's
to
like,
talk
this
with.
is so refreshing. It's like most of us here are on exactly the same page, have
Yep.
exactly the same interests, good perspectives, friendly challenging of different ideas or
Yeah,
opinions
yeah.
and whatever. And you're like, what an incredible change of pace this is from what we're usually exposed to.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, you guys with I mean, I remember when I wasn't living in Australia and early days before I even started doing podcasts, I was listening to you guys as well. So like I remember those times I was alone in another country at times. So I don't forget that. And
You're
what you guys have
incredibly brave,
done.
man, because the early days of the Prendercast were abysmally bad. I don't know. I've just seen Steve Raitman pop up in the chat. I have no
That
idea
is
how
the
he.
OG of all OGs right
I
there.
reckon. I reckon for a little while there, he was our only listener, and to this day, I got absolutely no idea. It's like Doc Brown in Back to the Future and the Libyans. How'd they find us? It's like, how did Steve Raitman find us? How did he tough it through 5 minutes of an episode? Um, and then slowly but surely, and you'd have exactly the same sort of relationship with that kind of weirdness of like, it's crazy to start doing something like this, okay, and then people start listening, and
Yeah,
then you're kind of like, how have you found us?
mate.
Like how like
We've had relationships start because of this channel. We've seen engagements. Um,
it's like this all started as an idea that you had, in another country to do this to talk about the footy club and all that. We just started doing this because I had an interest in media and I thought like producing a podcast. But of course, when you're an absolute nobody, you're like, well, I'm going to have to be on it as well because like.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
So I
course.
asked Fab, who I knew was a Carlton fan, and then it's sort of we start from there, and then Tim comes on board eventually. But yeah, you would have had the exact same situation where you're just like, when you reflect, why did I start doing this?
My thing at the start, and it rings true now, was document every week until we win the flag because we're dog shit in
Okay, well,
28.
see,
That
this
was
is
kind
it,
of like the ethos.
Terry. You've got a mission statement right there. We were just
Yeah,
three idiots recording a terrible conversation for like however long. Probably some people would say we still do it, but this weird thing, if you go, how did this even start? How did people who listen to us find us? Why did they listen to more than 5 minutes of the rubbish we were talking about?
yeah,
And then you kind of like, we had the fun chat recently about how we had a running gag on the show, which had run for long enough that we kind of took for granted that there'd be people who don't get it.
yeah,
And it was this kind of weird sort of like, oh, yeah, like that does make sense. There'd be people who don't understand the joke because we haven't actually referenced where the joke came from
For a
for
long time.
years.
Mm.
So, and that was sort of humbling again, where you had OG people kind of in on the joke, being like, I actually can't really remember. It was a story. It was funny that they were a bit like us, being like, I think it was this, this, and this. And then I was like, yeah, that kind of does ring a bell. And then Fad came on and corrected the story, having been the one that told it. But it was this fun kind of thing about, again, where it was, where it got to, where it's grown to, etc., which is so humbling. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, it is. It is. The community aspect, I didn't have any I could never have predicted and seen it coming. Yeah. I think when I decided to go to video, things changed a bit because initially it was just going to be a podcast. It was just going to be audio. And then I met AFTV. I did a little interview outside Cardiff Stadium when Arsenal won 3-2. And I think from that moment, it was like, oh no, why haven't we got this in Australia? Like, what are we doing?
Mate, the big thing and we've spoken about this in the past. I think the last time we had a chat, the most fascinating thing about the Australian sort of content landscape, and I mean that holistically between fan channels and the mainstream media, is how incredibly um, sort of like, and when I say juvenile, I just mean in the sense of like how young it is, like how far behind it is. If you think about what Britain do or what America do as a 30-odd-year-old, a 35-year-old, like the Australian, we're like 13. We're so far behind. Like you said, Arsenal Fan TV, and I imagine for you, when you went and saw Arsenal Fan TV doing their thing, one of the biggest takeaways probably would have been, "Oh, is this what this all this is?"
Yes. It was like,
You're
oh,
like, "Oh, is this all this is?" It's one guy
it's
with
like
a
a
camera,
tiny tripod
one
with the
guy with a
smallest camera. It was crazy.
one dude with a camera and a video light. Oh, is that all this is? This thing that's taken the sporting landscape by storm and inspired God knows how many copycats from every team, etc., and then grown because of that. And some of those guys have gone on to have like awesome content deals with big time media outlets, online media outlets. And then you've got stuff like the actual proper, the reason that these channels, your channels and fan channels do so well, like people who listen to me and listen to our show would understand this. And Bev Tone said it, the scale of the Australian media is much smaller. It absolutely is. But like the best soccer football content in the world right now is Gary Neville's channel, The Overlap.
The overlap easily.
And he started that probably because he thought he'd done some Sky stuff, obviously, but he was probably like, it's actually YouTube's free.
Yeah.
It's actually not that. This is the barriers to entry. There's actually no barriers to entry if you might have to buy a video camera or a mixer or something, microphone. Be like, the barriers to entry are so low.
Yeah.
And that's obviously created, you asked, there's so many Carlton channels. It feels like there's a new Carlton channel every week, which is great for the community. But it's like, God, we have lots of fans.
Yeah.
Like, um,
One thing about AFTV, which I identify really at the start, was as much as they've inspired me, I don't want to be. There are parts to what they do that I fundamentally disagree with. I think it
mm,
needed to have its own Carlton spin, footy spin. Yeah,
their stuff
it's
was definitely more like, um, to use the phrase, misery porn.
yeah, it's like, but they
Like
didn't
that.
have
That's what.
they didn't have someone to look at before them. So it's like they've done all the market research, so to speak,
Mm,
and I've just like taken like, oh, I like aspects of what's going on here, but not all of it.
yeah, and their thing too. What they tapped into, like inadvertently, was, and I'm guilty of this as well. If if Arsenal had a shocking result, you'd go to AFTV
Yeah,
because it was like talkback on steroids, and you would go to see what's the meltdown, what's Ty's meltdown, or what's DT. Who I think DT went to prison for like kidnapping his former
yeah,
partner.
yeah,
Jesus.
yeah,
But all those guys, poor old Claude, gone.
yeah.
Um, but you went to their channel because you wanted to see the meltdowns, and they played up to that. But
Hmm.
as somebody actually rightly pointed out here, James in the chat, um, One of the interesting things, and I don't want this is something that you can do. I have no idea why Fox Footy don't copy the fan debates that the overlap do. I've got no idea why they don't have the studio set up, have whoever their hosts are, get a representative from Carlton and Essendon and Collingwood and the Bulldogs and Richmond to come in and talk the issues of the day directly with yourself and your counterparts at the other channels. And the beauty of what that's created is it's actually given some of those guys who are really good operators and know what they're talking about an incredible platform to then go and do like what you would call traditional or quote like proper media.
Mm.
Like the Chelsea guy, I think his name's Rory, who had the legendary Haaland opinion, Haaland won't succeed in the Premier League. And he got like lambasted for it. Fair enough, he had his opinion and it backfired on him. That happens. He was on something else recently talking about the Euros just the other day about England. And he's had almost the best opinion of anybody talking about England I've seen. And he just started off as a passionate kind of marketing, like well-informed fan on a podcast about Chelsea. And you're like, barriers to entry, the only one that probably exists is the gatekeepers in traditional media who maybe don't want to expose the talent that they have, which is underwhelming, to voices like yourself and content creators who are actually kind of like doing just as impressive a work as the guys they're paying six figures to do.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Plus,
if we get some guy from a ramshack or backdoor, backyard podcast come in on one of these fan debates and genuinely blow people away and say more impressive, more interesting, more insightful stuff than what we're paying our Fox Footy pundits to say. Like, rather than go, I don't care, that's fine. There's like this feeling like they'd be threatened by that a little bit.
I feel it from the industry.
And it's
I
like,
do.
even the idea,
there's this undertone of your super
like, have
fan.
you ever gone to like even press conferences?
Oh, once. Not as in I haven't gone to ask. I wasn't allowed to ask a question, but I've been there while they've been setting up one.
So even little things like even reaching out and allowing, going, if you're in a position to, if you can, going, what's the harm in allowing a content creator to come down to a press conference?
I genuinely believe I could ask professionally thought out questions at the Carlton press conferences.
And you know what you know what you do, and having done this job in the past, a lot of the time these press conferences are a nuisance.
Yeah.
Like for the club, we have to do them because we have to do them. But what someone like yourself going to a press conference would actually add is it actually make them worthwhile because you'd actually ask questions that people are interested in hearing the answers to. You'd actually, and in turn, in a weird sort of way, that would actually give the media better sound bites because you'd be having more informed people asking better questions, which would give them better answers.
Yeah.
And then make the whole process more worthwhile. It's this really funny, like, circle of the press conferences suck because no one's got anything interesting to ask because no one's got an interesting, informed perspective. So bring in people who do, and the press conferences will be better. I'll tell a brief story. When I worked at Melbourne Victory, and we had, I can't for the life of me remember his name. He's a young guy, and he would come mostly to the post-match press conferences. He couldn't get to the midweek ones usually, but he would come to the post-match presses and ask like really incisive, interesting, tactical questions, and not to be a smartass because he knew what he was talking about. And I remember saying to Kev, not like really, really nice dude. Wish I could remember his name, but I remember saying to Kevin Muscat, who was the coach at the time, "Oh, just heads up, such and such is here, so he might ask you. He's not going to ask you a softball question about, how was the crowd tonight, Kev? Geez, good atmosphere." And Muskie went, "Yeah, good, yeah, great." And yeah, sure enough, he asked him a question about a tactical shift and a tactical evolution in the game, and that got the most interesting answer from the entire press conference because they were actually talking about what was happening on the pitch. Why did this happen? Why did you react to it this way? And that was all because a person who could ask a good question was in the room.
It's so bizarre.
It's bizarre. It's just, I remember standing there thinking, like, this is actually interesting.
Yeah. It helps
You know,
everyone.
rather
It helps
it helps
elevate
everybody.
the product.
Rather than sit there and, "Geez, Vossi, you must have been pretty happy with the way the boys, played tonight." Yes. Yeah, I was.
No, I want to know about his philosophies for like managing different personalities and how to push which button when and like how far to push someone's. Oh, yeah. No, look,
Well,
it's
see, Blue Bagger said here, it's almost like a chore, and no, you're exactly right, because
yeah,
the questions are so boring.
yeah,
Like, you and I we could go up and represent the footy club as the coach that week and probably get away with answering the same questions,
yeah,
and that's the thing of if you went in there, for instance, when we're traveling poorly and there's, like a pertinent question to be asked about S&C or about general fitness or about, the form of player X or whatever the case might be, or why can't Paddy Dow was Pat like some of the stuff with Paddy Dow gave me the shits
yeah,
because you're all asking the wrong question.
yeah.
And you're all asking the question because you think you've gone on Twitter and you see Carlton fans are talking about Paddy Dow, and you think that, okay, well, I'll just ask, why isn't Paddy Dow getting a game? And then whatever Voss says, which was always kind of unconvincing, follow up.
The funniest one this year was Xander Maguire. This was 2 or 3 weeks after Sayers had been voted back in as president, or he got the extra year. And maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks later, he asked the question in a presser. He's like, "Oh, what have you made about Sayers wanting to change the constitution?" It's like he's already been re-elected.
No, but Vossi's probably thinking respectfully, mate. Like, I get that this is a different question to normal. It's like, oh, I've got no idea what's going on with that. I think he's doing a good job, and it's good that he's sticking around, I suppose. But beyond the constitutional implications of us changing, the way we've done things and what that could potentially implications of that moving forward,
Yeah,
it's it's such an interesting thing. And as we've said it time and again, but yeah, the quality of the entire product would improve simply if the questions improve and it makes those segments, more worthwhile. Like this idea that a coach has to do a press conference because contractually they have to do one. Some of them are just useless.
yeah. You could use it as an opportunity
They'd be
to get
better off
right.
doing. Have we spoken about this in the past? They'd almost be better off doing just having the old fashioned. Um, I don't think that. I think they do it at the big tournaments. I don't know if they do it in like EPL matches per se, but just have the mix zone.
Yeah,
Just have a big mix zone somewhere. Find out where you want to put it. And NBA, this is a better example. American sports style. If you're an accredited member of the press, you can just walk in and Terry, you play tonight. Go, Tez, I need to have a chat to you about whatever, such and such. How'd you play tonight, sort of thing. And I just talk to you. And if someone else is there that wants to talk to you, we'll interview you together. But it might be 3 or 4 of us. And then another journo will have an exclusive with someone else.
yeah,
And then another journo will have an exclusive with someone else. And you just pick them up. Maybe it's when they're walking out of the rooms to the car, they've got to go through the mix zone and answer a question, etc. It would so improve the product if, like, using an example. This is just a spitballing example. Imagine if there was a mix zone on Friday. When did we play? Friday night.
Friday
Imagine
night.
if there was a mix zone on Friday night, and just for a bit of fun, like the besties girls were there, picking up boys as they leave the ground. Have a quick word for us. Have a chat. Ask them a question or two, and you get a little silly TikTok out of it. It goes for a
Mm,
minute,
mm,
and then just as well, imagine if there's, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but a more bread and butter, nuts and bolts journo
yeah.
who then picks up someone and does a Q&A, which results in an exclusive piece on the whatever website the next day. And it's not just this homogenized trash media where we all get the same thing and just have to make do with it being garbage. Like,
The same questions, the same
the
answers.
same questions, the same answers. Like,
In the
I
chats
think
that I do with the boys, I really do feel. I mean, George Hewitt smiled. I got him to laugh.
he's
You know
probably
what I mean?
thinking, thank God.
I was like, I'm talking about his little boy, and he just like his face lit up, and I was like, oh my god, like you really tap into that, and they trust me because like they know I'm not trying to get a headline. It's like I really feel like we can do good work.
It's let you or these fan channels, let these fan channels do some of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Like, actually handball to them and let them do some of the lifting and develop some of the content and have some fun with it. Again, I don't know if we spoke about this on the chat we had earlier in the year, but like in preseason, do a big mix zone in the warm-up area.
Yeah.
After an open training session, and just invite you down and invite Paul down and invite the besties girls down and whoever else, and just do a fan day and say, look, here's a pen, basically, like the Formula Ones after a race, and the guys will just make their way around the pen, and takes half an hour, and you get what you get, and then what you can turn that into later
Yeah.
is up to you. But the winner is the club looks like they're open and they're accessible and they're, progressive. The content guys get to all put their own spin on things and deliver their own style of content. And the players all get this sense of, oh, I get to actually know, oh, yeah, recognize A, B, and C. And, oh, yeah, okay, he's not too bad. That was pretty straightforward. I was fucking probably rather do that than a chat with SEN.
Yep.
Or I'd probably rather chat to them than go on 3OW, So that's, again, where things can hopefully grow up. And
One day.
like the channel, as I said, like, it'd be so funny if someone like yourself got to go down to a presser and just like ask for a change, ask a good question. Like,
I know sometimes, like if I hear Paul Sebastiani's voice, I know it's his voice straight away, and John O'Baruch. Like I know straight away, I'm like, oh, okay. At least I know that they're going to ask something that has context to us.
Even like if I was if I was a journo and I was going out to, doesn't matter, Richmond's press conference this week, I'll just jump on Twitter and I'd almost just go, what do you want me to ask him?
Yeah.
Hey, Richmond fans, go, what do you want? What do you want to ask?
Boy, Tiger Tom, what do you want to know?
Hey, Tiger Tom, what do you want to? No, seriously, go. What do you want me to ask him? And then just go. That's the best one, or that's the interesting one. That's one. Here we go.
Yeah.
And just get better stuff out of it. We have veered off into an extraordinary tangent.
Yeah, we went deep. Yeah.
As people watching or listening can probably understand, that kind of inner workings of things and the potential evolution of things is a bit of a hobby horse of ours, isn't it?
Yeah. No,
it's something that we would like to see change.
Yeah. Well, we'll just keep plugging away. Thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
And we'll do this again.
Love it.
All right. Go Blues. Bye, everyone.
Bye.